Welcome everyone to the monthly meeting of the Knoxville, Knox County Planning Commission. I am Tim Hill, Chair of the Planning Commission, and I'll be conducting today's meeting. Assisting me today is the Executive Director of the Knoxville, Knox County Planning, Jeff Welch, and the Planning Commission Attorney, Tasha Blakeney. I would like to call this meeting to order. I will now ask Ms. Karen to call the roll.
Yes, good afternoon. Commissioner Uten?
Here.
Commissioner Boyer? Commissioner Phillips?
Here.
Commissioner Huber?
Here.
Commissioner Scelso?
Here.
Commissioner Perez? Here. Commissioner Browning?
Here.
Commissioner Higgins?
Here.
Commissioner Levinson?
Here.
Commissioner Adams?
Here.
Commissioner Roth?
Here.
Commissioner Barger has informed us she will be late. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Midas?
Here.
Commissioner Hill?
Here.
That's 13 present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Karen. Participating today are planning commissioners as well as planning staff and various representatives of the city and county agencies. The planning commissioners are citizens from the city and county who have been appointed by either the city mayor or county mayor. We receive no salary and volunteer our time as a service to our community. Now a word about how discussion will take place. After each item is called, I'll read the staff's recommendation. On certain items, I'll call on staff to comment. At this time, the applicant may address the commission or defer his or her opening remarks and allow any opposition to speak first. The applicant and those in support of the applicant will be given a total of 5 minutes to speak. I will then ask for other comments from the floor. The opposition will also be given a total of 5 minutes to speak. If either side wishes to have an opportunity for rebuttal, you'll need to reserve time from your allotted 5 minutes. Applicants and citizens who register to participate and are attending the meeting in person will be asked to come to the podium and share their name and address for the record where their item is heard. If you would like to speak on an agenda item and have not registered to do so in advance, please raise your hand when the item is read into the record. I will then indicate when it is time for you to speak, and you can approach the podium at that time. You'll be asked to sign in at the podium as well as state your name and address for the record. The Planning Commission may grant additional time for presentation of information. Speakers should limit their remarks to the facts of the case and should avoid repeating comments that have been previously presented to the Planning Commission. Because of the number of items we have before us, groups in favor or opposed to an item have been asked to appoint a spokesperson to represent them. If you have any items that you would like to make as part of the record, please submit those documents to knoxplanning.org/share. Please identify the file number and meeting date in your submittal. I hope all of you have reviewed the agenda package from Planning's website. In addition to the agenda, there's information on the website related to how today's meeting will be conducted, as well as correspondence on individual cases. Many of the items we vote on require further action by City Council or County Commission. For matters that are forwarded to City Council for final action, the applicant or the representative should be present at the meeting at which the request will be considered. For matters forwarded to the County Commission for final action, particularly rezoning requests, the applicant or their representative must, and I repeat, must, be present at the meeting at which the request will be considered, or the case will, at a minimum, be postponed. Applicants will be notified of the meeting date. If you have any questions regarding the meeting date or process, please contact planning staff. Today's meeting will be conducted in order of the agenda. Please stand as you are able as Vice Chair Chris Uten leads us in the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father, bless this community. Help to ensure the decisions made this afternoon are fair, legal, and in the best interest of the total community. As always, keep us mindful of the needs of others, especially those who are in sorrow, need, sickness, or any other adversity. Amen.
Next on the agenda are the postponement and withdrawal lists. Under automatic postponements, we have item 9, Shannon Hills subdivision, item 29, DK Levy Architecture and Design, let's see here, items to be voted on to be postponed. We have none. Okay, from the withdrawal list. Well, let me back up and ask, are there any requests to postpone any items? If not,
Mr. Chair, motion to postpone 30 days.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair, which item?
I thought you said you read the postponements done in 27.
Not, those are automatic postponements, but yeah, okay. All right, we have no other postponements. We'll move on to withdrawals. We have item 11, Holly Janney from the tabled list. We have a withdrawal from DK Levy. Chair will entertain a motion to withdraw items as read.
Motion to withdraw. Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Roth. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Items be removed from the table. We have 5117 Lonis Drive subdivision. Chair will entertain a motion to untable item as read.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Phillips, seconded by Vice Chair Uten. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the consent list. Do we have any recusals from the consent list? I will be recusing myself on this consent list. The consent list, which is composed of items marked with a C, these are items considered non-controversial and are voted on all at once in order to save time. Items are listed in order they appear on the agenda. Please listen carefully. And I'll repeat, please listen carefully. Once an item is approved as part of the consent list, there will be no further discussion on it. Item 2, approval of May 11 agenda. Item 3, approval of April 13, 2023 minutes. Item 5, Cherokee Country Club. Item 6, Land Development Solutions. Item 12, Mary Catherine Wormsley, Hatcher Hill Properties, FKA Craig Reynolds. Item 13, Robin South. Item 14, Christine Moody. Item 15, Tyler Stinnett. Item 16, Carbon Rivers, Inc. Item 17, City of Knoxville. Item 18, City of Knoxville. Item 19, City of Knoxville. Item 20, Shelley Milbacher. Item 22, DC Foundations, Inc. Item 23, Homestead Land Holdings. Item 26, Breakville Road Subdivision. Item 27, Sparks Meadow. Item 32, Benefield Richter's Company. Item 34, Terry Romans. Item 36, Christy Rivera. Are there requests to remove any items from the consent list?
I'd like to remove item number 17.
Commissioner Higgins has a request to remove item 17 from the consent list. Commissioner Midas?
Yeah, Chairman Hill, I'd like to remove item 18 from the
Commissioner Midas requests item 18. Do we have any other requests?
22.
Sir, if you'll approach the podium, please. Thank you.
22.
Okay, and could you state your name and address, please?
My name is Alvin Austin.
Okay. Item 22. never mind. I got it. Okay. Okay, so we're going, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent list with the exception of items 17, 18, and 22. Do I have that right?
Motion to approve as read.
Hang on just a second, Mr. Chairman. When you read this, you said item number 6. In the list, I'm seeing 6.1.
6 Excuse me. Let me look at that. Okay, I'll correct that by saying item 6.1, Land Development Solutions. Corrected from what I previously stated as item 6.
And for the record, Chairman Hill has already indicated recusal. Are there any other recusals for the consent?
All right, so we have a motion by Vice Chair Uten, and where was my second? We had a second by Commissioner Smith. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. First item on the agenda is item number 6. The applicant is Crescent Bend Development, location north side of Central Avenue Pike at the northern terminus of Murray Drive, 91.24 acres. Present zoning, general agricultural and hillside protection overlay. Zoning requested RN6 multifamily residential neighborhood and hillside protection overlay. Existing land use, agricultural, forestry, vacant land. Staff recommendation, approve RN6 and hillside protection because it is consistent with the sector plan and compatible with the surrounding development. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Do we have any opposition? Seeing no opposition, would you like to proceed, Mr. Applicant, and state your name and address?
Sure. Taylor Forrester, 1111 North Shore Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee. Here on behalf of the applicant, Crescent Bend Development LLC. Instant request is to rezone the property to RN6. Prior to filing, we took time and met with planning staff to talk about the property, discuss the proposed development plans for the property and use of the property. Following their kind of guidance and advice, we submitted for the RN6. As you'll notice, a substantial portion of this property is subject to the hillside protection plan, and it has several based on the grade undisturbable areas. The reason for the RN6 is it's not the density needed for the RN6, it's the RN5 height limitations of 35 feet in order to kind of get a 3-story apartment in there. Based on how it's measured from ground to roof pitch, you exceed the 3-story, the 35-foot maximum. Makes this property appropriate and suitable and attractive for multifamily development is its location and how it's situated between 2 interstate interchanges. You have one to the north at Callahan Drive and then one to the south at Merchants Drive. That'll alleviate traffic congestion and assist in dispersing the traffic to and from the site. We've been in conversations with Legacy Parks with this property, positive conversations on donating a significant portion of the property to Legacy Parks. And kind of the discussions or thoughts are that a trail system could be established there as a public amenity for the area. My client's committed to see that through. And again, RN6, minor extension of the zone with the property to the south being adjacent, zoned RN6, complies with the North City Sector Plan's mixed-use specialty district, as well as the growth policy plan and general plan. We'd ask that you approve the rezoning request to RN6 hillside protection. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman Hill. Mr. Forrester, on the area that you might transfer to for conservation purposes, will there be access to that site?
Correct. It'd be access from Central Avenue Pike, either through our development or a separate access adjacent to our development, but on our property. And those have been the discussions with Legacy Parks of creating that access road and then parking area as well.
All right, great, thank
And
you.
so that area would be kind of the backside of the property where the railroad line is, kind of across the back. I think it's approximately 17 acres is what we're looking at, and that was an attractive number to Legacy Parks.
Thank you. Motion to approve RN6 multifamily residential neighborhood hillside protection overlay zoning.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Phillips and seconded by Commissioner Levinson. Vice Chair Uten, did you have a comment?
No,
Okay. All right. Seeing no other lights, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda is item number 7. Buffett Mill Estates is the subdivision. The applicant developer is R.D. Buffett LLC. Location, south side of Buffett Mill Road, north side of McIntyre Road, eastern terminus of Monte Vista Road. Approximate acreage, 70.68 acres. Zoning is RN2 and hillside protection overlay. Existing land use, agricultural, forestry, vacant land. Proposed use, detached residential subdivision. Number of lots, 290. And this will require 2 variances and alternative design standards. Let's see here. So staff recommendation, approve the requested variance and alternative design standard based on the justification provided by the applicant and recommendations of the City of Knoxville Department of Engineering. And the second motion would be approve the concept plan subject to 14 conditions. Is the applicant present?
We're present.
Do we have any opposition? Okay, would you like to defer, Councilor Mullins?
I'll go first. We were here on this last week. Of course, this is a subdivision concept plan for a little over 70.6 acres, 290 units, which breaks down to about 4.2 dwelling units an acre. And in comparison, the closest subdivision there is Buffett Trace. It has 83 units and 14 and a half acres, which is about 5.7 dwelling units an acre, and they're attached. Staff's recommending this approval subject to 14 conditions. We were here last month. It was deferred, so we'd have a chance to meet with the neighborhood out there, and we were able to meet on May 1st. Had a good meeting. Mr. Collins was able to organize it at a local church there. I guess we had over 30 people that was at the meeting, and we talked about these issues for over 2 hours and some of the concerns. And as a result of that meeting, there are a couple of concessions that were really important to many of the neighbors that we're able to make. So I guess we would like to add 2 conditions to the approval as part of this application. One, there was a lot of concern. In our plan, there is a greenway trail. There's internal sidewalks on one side of the street, so there's plenty of pedestrian opportunities in this development. But the greenway that goes all around the perimeter of the property, there are concerns about how close that got to some of the existing residences and how that may require some more disturbance and less vegetation, which would affect privacy issues. And so we agreed we would just take the greenway trails around the perimeter off the plan. I think it would be a good amenity for the people that live there, but if the neighbors have a concern about that, we're willing to remove that from the plan altogether. There's also some areas, we're trying to keep as much of the existing vegetation along the perimeter as we can, but there's some areas because of the topography that will have to be disturbed and graded. And we've agreed that whatever we disturb and grade along that perimeter, we'll go back and revegetate to add some more greenery and try to reestablish some of the privacy that they enjoy now. I have a very rudimentary drawing kind of as to what that would look like. I only have one copy. I'll give it to Ms. Cannon and put it in the record. But we would ask that that this be conditioned upon us, submitting a plan to the staff for their approval administratively for the revegetation of those areas, to make sure that we are going to do what we say we do on that as we go through permitting. But with that, there may still be some concerns. We talked a lot about traffic, and there's a traffic impact analysis in the record. And they didn't recommend any improvements to the area. We know the traffic's an issue out there. It's an issue before we came. It's going to be an issue after we're there. But traffic impact analysis, says you're still going to be within the existing level of service that is already there with the current traffic issues. And we can't obviously solve the problems that are existing there already. So with all of that, I'd ask you follow staff's recommendation with the modification for the two conditions that I've mentioned here today, and that you vote to approve this. And I'll reserve any time I have left to answer any questions or address anything that the other speakers may bring up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Ronnie Collins, would you like to speak? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, because, last meeting, Mr. Mullins, I did ask you all to go back and meet with the homeowners association. I have had a chance to talk with them. I appreciate you all doing that, and I think the work that's reflected in the two additional amendments that came forward is what happens when community and development works together. So thank you all, and I want to thank all of the neighborhood associations out there for caring about their community. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the requested variances.
Hang on, wait just a minute. I thought I saw a hand from Mr. Collins that wanted to speak, but.
Sorry, there's one other person.
Okay, all right. So let's, we have several, okay. I'm not wrong. Huh? Okay. Those that would like to speak, if you'd come near the podium, I would appreciate that. So I think our opposition spoke last month, is that right? And would like to speak again this month. And if it's, I'm going to defer to our commission here. Are you guys okay with, okay. Please proceed. State your name and address, please.
I'm Damon Reed. I'm at 5020 Starbuck Lane on property that's connected to the bottom curve down there. The only thing I have concerns for is we haven't seen what the landscape plan is, and the current rough draft that he's got right now shows that the land in front of my property is going to be graded down and all the vegetation is going to be tucked out. So I'm a little bit leery on that to see what all is going to be put back in its place to give it back to privacy. And of course, there's no plans for the grading that I've seen for that area as well. As far as traffic concerns, it was brought up at the meeting that the railroad crossing at Lowe's Creek was not part of the survey. I think that's kind of a bad thing because it does cause a big choke point during some parts of the day because you have Spring Hill backs up due to the train, and that's the only way you can get to Furlage Pike. So that's the only other concern I really have on like the traffic in the area. And I would probably recommend if this goes in, we got to do something with Spring Hill, especially the coming up the hill part. So I've seen so many cars go off that road into that ditch. If there was a way we can maybe perhaps widen it just a little bit to keep people from going off into the ditches, especially in the wintertime, that would probably be beneficial. I know as far as the property itself too, I know on my side I was kind of hoping, but crap, they didn't bring water with me, sorry about that. But I was hoping to have like maybe a fence put up to help with privacy and sound issues, because right now you can hear that train that's over on notice of Love's Creek. It's like an amphitheater in my area. So I do have some concerns about the sound and everything. But that's all I've got as far as concerns. So I'll go ahead and reserve my time just in case there's anything else brought up. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Did we have any other in opposition? Okay.
Ronnie Collins, President of the Alice Bell Spring Hill Neighborhood Association, 4606 Washington Pike. I basically just wanted to thank you all for the postponement last month to have a chance to meet with them. The two major concerns he showed in their new concept was the walking trail and the vegetation. So that was something great to come out of the meeting. I guess the biggest concern I had out of anything was during the meeting. It says there's a minimum traffic issue. I talked to Tom Claybo, Chief Director of City Engineering, and 290 units puts 10,000 more vehicles or traffic in the area per day. And I don't know how 10,000 more traffic can be a minimum. And the other was, I believe it came out of 3 schools, they were expecting 79 students for 3 different, between elementary, middle, and high school, 79 in the study. I don't know who's doing these studies, but if you're building 290 houses and only expect 79 school children to be in there, something don't match in my idea. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. All right, let's see here. Let's go. Commissioner Smith.
So, and Ronnie, I'll address that because I've asked that question before. The school system actually gives a lot of those student yields back, so that comes from KCS. That's where those come from. So that's probably something we probably do need to address with them to make sure they're looking at their formulas right, because it's something else that we've had some concern about. But with that, before I make my motion, I do want to ask, based on the gentleman that lives right next door, can we request the city engineering just to look at the Spring Hill Buffett Mill to make sure the curbs are wide enough so when cars are turning so they're not going off in the ditch? Not part of the motion, but just something that we can request of city engineering. So with that, I now move to approve the requested variance and alternative design standards based on the justification provided by the applicant and recommended by the City of Knoxville Department of Engineering, including the 2 that the applicant brought today, which is removement of the greenway as number 4, and then fixing any disturbed existing vegetation as condition number 5.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Roth. Was that right? Okay, Commissioner Roth. And that's for the first motion to approve the variance and alternative design standards.
I think the conditions should be added to the concept plan.
Wherever you would like them put.
So those 2 conditions would be condition 15 and condition 16 as part of the concept plan.
Will you modify
it
take
to
that,
15, 16.
Take that off and we'll address it on the second motion.
Gotcha.
You good with that?
Yes.
And you good with that as a second? Okay, so we've got a first, a second. Commissioner Shelso.
Maybe Mr. Reynolds can help me. The Greenway path, was this planned to be public or only for the neighborhood?
Mr. Mullins, can you address that?
I don't believe we restricted it in either way, and there's still a right-of-way that's remaining open as part of the concept plan, I think, to Monte Vista. That was, there's some opportunity there with the internal sidewalks. I don't know if we had restricted the Greenway path, whether it was open to the public or private, one way or the other.
So when you guys met with the neighborhood, did they understand that to be either a public amenity or is that understood
I
to be
think
private amenity?
they understood that it would put a walking path right along their property line in their backyards and didn't want people walking by their backyards in that manner.
Okay. So my point is that I think that the Greenway Trail was a really great public amenity. And I don't know if maybe it was communicated right, that it could have been for the entire public. But I am not a fan of seeing it disappear. If it goes behind a few properties, looking at the properties it goes behind, I mean, you've got some landscaping buffers still on some of them, but I'd like to see that stay.
I guess we can address that on the second motion. Would that be appropriate? Address that on the second motion. So let's go ahead and work on this first motion, which is the requested variance and alternative design standard. So let's move on to Mr. Reynolds. Did you have a comment?
I can wait until after the variance vote.
Okay. All right. then let's go with Commissioner Adams. Okay. Let's see. All right, so I guess we're all good now on this motion. So we have a motion and a second. Seeing no other lights for this particular topic, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right.
All right, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll make my original motion to approve the concept plan, knowing there's going to be some discussion, subject to now 16 conditions, adding number 15 as the neighborhood recommended of removing the greenway so as not to restrict any privacy for homes. And then number 5, fixing any disturbed vegetation back to kind of its existing nature to preserve that longstanding vegetation in the area.
Second.
Now, wait a minute, that second one is, would that be number 16, would it?
Yeah, I wrote down 5. It's 6, whatever time of day it is.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the concept plan subject to 16 conditions as just described. Did we have a second? Okay, we have a second by Commissioner Roth. Okay, so let's go with Commissioner Adams.
I want to express that I concur with Commissioner Scelso. Don't want to see that greenway disappear, and it does represent a positive amenity for the community at large, and I'm not sure exactly about the communication either, so I don't want to see that go away.
Okay, Commissioner Higgins.
I agree with that, and that's the other thing I wanted to say, and also pointing out that the majority of the greenway is on the side of the property that doesn't have individual houses next to it. There are portions that go behind individual houses, but as Commissioner Scelso said, there's still a landscape buffer there, and I think as a body, we very frequently talk about activity and walkability, and I know that there's a sidewalk here, but one of the biggest complaints with an issue that we see in our society is people not having opportunities to walk and exercise. And a sidewalk is one thing, but a greenway like this, if you've got kids, I have young kids myself, and if I were to live here, I would not want to walk them around on the sidewalk. I would want to walk and let them play along the greenway. And we're talking about 290 homes here. I bet there's going to be some kids here. So I agree that I don't think that's a wise decision. I can't support that aspect or that motion.
Vice Chair Uten.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to take Mr. Mullins up on his offering to submit that exhibit for the additional condition number 16, just so as staff and engineering can be clear on where that vegetative buffer repurposing would be. That way it's not a blanket that people aren't clear on.
Commissioner Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can we hear from the community? He's got his hand up back there on the green.
Mr. Reed, would you like to come up? I think ordinarily we keep this within discussion here, but we did bring up kind of a new condition here, and he may be most affected, so I think it's appropriate to hear from him.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that Loves Creek has a park within walking distance of the new subdivision, so the ability to have children play and walk in a safe environment would be still available to the community. The only thing that would be a detriment to the subdivision is putting in the walkway, because you'd have all kinds of people. It'll give new entrances to people that don't live in the community into that area. It can cause a higher crime rate because people can disappear into the woods easy. I think that was the main concern the group had about that, plus it being right in their back door. And if you have been in the area, you have noticed an increase in the homeless population. I myself have seen a guy basically either on drugs or something down at the railroad crossing playing on railroad tracks, and called the authorities to have him removed from the railroad tracks so he wouldn't get killed. I would like to see the provisions stay in there to remove the walk path due to the park being so close to the subdivision. And as the community, we all kind of agreed, even the developer, that would be in the best interest in having that so close. It'd be a amenity to the subdivision. It wouldn't be anything took away. But just wanted to point that out.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill. I think historically, there's evidence out there that's been studied for several years that greenways actually add value to properties. Also on the issue of any crime issues, that's generally not an issue on most greenways. So I'm like with my cohorts there, I would like to see it stayed in, and I'll support keeping it in there, but won't approve taking it out.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds.
I just have a quick housekeeping item. Last month, the staff report accidentally messed up on the numbering of the conditions, which was supposed to be 15. I accidentally put number 4 twice, and I corrected it in my own personal print here, but evidently it did not make it to the agenda packet. So there's 15 conditions. If we add 2, then it would be 16 and 17.
Okay, so we'll just, minor correction there. There are actually 17 conditions just because the report was misnumbered. Okay, so everybody clear on that? Commissioner Phillips, you good with everything? Okay. Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the 17 conditions. To approve the concept plan subject to 17 conditions. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No.
Let's, I think we better call the roll, Ms. Karen.
I would agree, thank you. Commissioner Uten? Commissioner Phillips?
No.
Commissioner Huber?
No.
Commissioner Shelto?
No.
Commissioner Perez?
No.
Commissioner Browning?
Aye.
Commissioner Higgins?
No.
Commissioner Levinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Adams?
No.
Commissioner Roth?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Midas?
No.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
5 yes and 8 no? Oh, I'm sorry,
Motion-
1, 2, 3,
that
4,
motion
5, 6.
failed.
I'm sorry, it's 6 to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Chair will entertain
6, 7.
another motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the concept plan subject to 16 conditions, with the additional one not in the staff report being to revegetate the perimeter of the property as presented in a newly obtained exhibit somewhere.
Second.
Okay, maybe I didn't get it. So start over if you would on that one. I thought we were dealing with the Greenway.
Right. So
Okay,
it's on,
okay.
the concept plan as presented has the greenway in it.
Okay.
Already. So it's just adding this revegetative perimeter
Okay.
condition.
So 16, this is approve the concept plan subject to the 16 conditions that you have uniquely noted. Okay. All right. Do we have a second? Okay. We have Commissioner Huber seconding the motion. We have Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, and I just mostly want to caution this body because last month we asked for a 30-day delay. The neighborhood went back with the developer. The neighborhood, not the developer, but the neighborhood specifically asked for something to be taken out because of an area they live in, knowing the homeless population, some of the drug population going on in that area, how wooded and forested it is. I lived in that area. A lot of entrance points. I think we need to be careful not to dismiss when a neighborhood works with a developer to come up with something that they feel is safe for their community, but just because we think it might be good amenity when there is a park across the street. That's my only feedback as y'all are doing this, because I think it's setting a very dangerous precedence for us to just say to local communities, we don't care what you think, we're going to do whatever we want to do. And that's not getting the community involved, which is what we need right this minute.
Mr. Reynolds.
Just wanted to point out that, so that there's 2 conditions that are somewhat sidewalk related in the staff report dealing with the connection to Monte Vista. There's not a condition of installing the trail system. It is recognized that the trail is on the plan. They can install the trail if they want to. There was not a condition to require the trail to be installed. So if you want to require it, I would suggest conditioning it upon, like, installing the trail system. Or you could just leave it as is, as an optional installation where the developer could still choose not to install it. But basically, it wouldn't be a condition that they can't install it. It would be still their option to install it or not install it.
I'll amend my motion that raises other questions I have about the concept plan, what can be changed, though. Maybe we can talk about that another time, but yeah, I'll make it a condition to keep the greenway as presented.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Scelso, seconded by Commissioner Huber. This is an interesting deliberation here where, you know, we have the community and the developer agreeing on certain conditions, and it's challenging for this body. Is there a greater good, or do we defer to the community and the developer? Good discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Call a roll. Ms. Karen.
Commissioner Uten? Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Huber?
Yes.
Commissioner Scelso?
Yes.
Commissioner Perez?
Yes.
Commissioner Browning?
No.
Commissioner Higgins?
Yes.
Commissioner Levinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Roth?
No.
Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Midas?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
No.
Motion, I have 7 yea, 5 no.
7 yea, 5 no.
8, I'm sorry, I cannot count today. I apologize.
That's all
8 to
right.
5.
I'm a bit off mine too, so. All right, so motion passes.
I know.
8-5. Thank you. Motion passes 8-5. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 8. Subdivision JW Construction on Cedar Lane, applicant developer JW Construction, location north side of Cedar Lane, east of Lindale Road, approximate acreage 7.61, zoning RN1, single-family residential neighborhood with hillside protection overlay, existing land use, single-family residential, agricultural, forestry, vacant land, proposed use, detached residential subdivision, number of lots 23. Subdivision variances, none. Staff recommendation, approve the concept plan subject to 12 conditions. Is the applicant present? Please state your name and address.
It's Katie Wozek. I work for Batzenheim's, address 4334 Paper Mill Drive.
All right. And do we have any opposition? Seeing no opposition, you may proceed.
So our concept is for a 23-lot single-family subdivision on Cedar Lane, and we are in agreement with staff recommendation, subject to the conditions.
Thank you. All right. Commissioner Phillips.
Motion to approve the concept plan subject to 12 conditions as recommended by staff.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Phillips to approve per staff recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Huber. Seeing no other lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a special use review. Item number 10, applicant Taco Bell of America LLC, Robert Sullivan, location north side of Kingston Pike, west of Westwood Road, 1.02 acres. Current zoning CG1, existing land use commercial, proposed use restaurant with drive-through facility. Staff recommendation is to approve the request for a drive-through facility in the CG1 zoning district, subject to 6 conditions. Is the applicant present?
Good afternoon. I'm Sarah McGowan with the GPD Group, representing Taco Bell.
Thank you. If you could state your address, please.
Oh, yes. It's 520 South Main Street, Suite 2531, Akron, Ohio.
All right. Thanks. Let's see. We have a number of people signed up to speak. Would you like to proceed or defer?
We'd like to defer to hear the public comment.
Okay, thank you. And let's see here. Let's start with Roderick Ledbetter.
Good afternoon. I'm Roderick Ledbetter. I'm the proprietor of Callaway's Lamp and Shade, located at 5714 Kingston Pike. Callaway's has always been a fixture in Bearden since 1946. Bearden has grown and changed significantly in that time. However, the unique personality of our village is still very much the same. Historic Bearden is known for art, fashion, design, and cuisine, not to mention a very beautiful elementary school, which I once attended when I was much younger. That being the case, the traffic between North Shore and Sutherland Avenue is already considerably congested, causing traffic to back up in the exact location of this proposed Taco Bell, especially when school's let out. I don't know if you've been there, stuck in that traffic when you can't even get in the right lane because everyone's picking their kid up at Bearden. But this is particularly detrimental to the surrounding small businesses like mine. I don't know about you, but I try to avoid high traffic areas. There are plenty of scenic routes surrounding Bearden that I'd much rather look at than staring at taillights. Many of my customers feel that same way. I know that because they plan their trips to my store when it's more convenient because there's less traffic. They typically don't like coming on Fridays. As such, I'm extremely concerned that our sales will be negatively impacted. Please understand, if our sales decrease, so do the number of people I am able to employ. So my main complaint is I ask you, is it really necessary for us to have another fast food chain right there in the heart of Bearden, right where it's a high traffic area already, when you can go 2 miles down the road to get your Taco Bell fix? I call on this committee to deny the request for Taco Bell to be built at 5613 Kingston Pike.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. Appreciate your comments. Leslie Gordon.
Good afternoon. I'm Leslie Gordon. My address is 116 Westwood Road. I would like to ask the commissioners if you would consider giving us more time. We are not a coordinated group. We are several different parents and business owners in the area who have not, some of us have spoken with each other, but others of us were not expecting each other to be here. And we'd appreciate it if we could have a little bit more time.
Thank you for your comments.
I think you're asking for more than 5 minutes of time. Is that what
A little bit.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I misunderstood. I thought you were asking for a
No,
postponement.
no, more time for comments. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
All right. I think we can give a few extra minutes. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Yeah.
All right, thank you. As I said, I'm a homeowner in the Westwood community. I'm a parent, a Bearden Elementary School student, and I use my bicycle as my primary vehicle, which is a wonderful thing we can do in the Westwood community. So consequently, I'm concerned about the impact of Kingston Pike traffic on the surrounding streets and the worsening effect of another drive-through will create. We do have several drive-throughs in our community already. So on Monday, Taco Bell reached out and presented us with information to suggest that a drive-through would have minimal impact on traffic. And they used the idea of a trip generation formula in order to reach that. But unfortunately, I feel the information that they presented to us was disingenuous and manipulative, and quite frankly, to the point of dishonesty. In their presentation, they said that a Taco Bell would generate fewer trips than a sit-down restaurant would. They specifically said a high-volume sit-down restaurant. So an example of a high-volume sit-down restaurant would be something like an Applebee's. Well, a typical Applebee's is about 5,000 square feet, and Taco Bell base their trip generation data on the existing square footage of the old Cas Walker that is there. That is 17,565 square feet. There's a 3-story Applebee's in Times Square. It is the largest Applebee's in the world, and it is a mere 15,000 square feet. So I feel that basing the traffic or the trips generated data on what would be the literal largest Applebee's type restaurant in the world compared to a drive-through restaurant is disingenuous. In fact, if you do the math, and I use the formulas that they used, a 500 square foot restaurant or 5,000 square foot restaurant would create 48% fewer trips than a Taco Bell drive-through would. An attempt to persuade me that their business would be the safest choice for my community, Taco Bell presented incorrect information based on inappropriate data to reach a false conclusion. And I don't appreciate being manipulated, and I don't appreciate being manipulated when the safety of my community and my child are what the subject is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lauren Rasmussen? Is Lauren Rasmussen here? Move on to Miller Fouch.
We go Zoom, sorry. My name is Miller Fouch. I live on Woodburn Drive. I'm a resident of Westwood, a member of the Westwood Traffic Committee, and a parent at Bearden Elementary School. I hope you have read the online comments as you were scrolling through. I saw those earlier. As of this morning, there were 145, double the number of comments in any case in the last 2 months. This drive-through will increase traffic congestion in an already notorious area of Kingston Pike. Creating worse traffic congestion here will directly impact the adjacent residential neighborhood and 2 adjacent schools. I walk my children to Bearden Elementary, and I live in the parental responsibility zone, which means by law, I either walk or drive my students to school. But very few families walk to school from Westwood because of traffic safety concerns. There are actually 2 schools abutting this property, not 1. Knoxville Adaptive Education Center is an alternative school serving our most fragile students in Knox County. Several teachers commented publicly against this development due to safety concerns due to their population's tendency for elopement. Taco Bell has tried to justify they will not interfere with school arrival and dismissal times, but Bearden Elementary and KAEC are community hubs, and they house programming long past dismissal time. The YMCA has an aftercare facility at Bearden Elementary School. One Knox Soccer uses the fields at KAEC year-round, and West Bearden Basketball League uses KAEC year-round, both the gym for practices and games. KAEC is also the hub for extended school year for students with disabilities in Knox County. The Westwood Traffic Committee recently worked with the city to complete a traffic study. I submitted that online. The traffic study results for my road alone show an average of 856 vehicles per day. Westwood Road has an average of 1,009 vehicles per day. These high traffic counts are because Westwood neighborhood is routinely used as a cut-through for drivers avoiding traffic congestion on Kingston Pike. Westwood has been approved for additional traffic calming measures due to these high car counts. The city warned us, the Office of Neighborhoods, that traffic calming measures are hard to approve due to needing over 50% of agreement from affected residents. It speaks volumes that we had unanimous support and approval from every impacted household. Finally, we have heard several comments regarding the deterioration of the building. This shouldn't be approved on the sole basis that it will fix the owner's negligent responsibility of his property. If he had taken care of this property, we wouldn't be dealing with the eyesore that it is and facing demolition of a historic structure. I respectfully ask that you stand your ground on your own zoning policy regarding drive-throughs and not approve this application. At the very least, the commission should require a full-blown city engineering traffic study be completed prior to any further discussions. The developer said that one was not required, so they generated their own data for submission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Miss Amy Hathaway.
My name is Amy Hathaway. I live at 421 Circle Hill Drive. Is there any chance I can have like 1 more minute? Again, we're not informed of who has signed up to speak. We've asked for that information. We're not told, and so it's impossible for us to coordinate with who has signed up. Thank you. I'm currently serving as president of Forest Heights Neighborhood Association, and I'm here today speaking on behalf of the majority of the association's board of directors. I attended the meeting Monday night, and Taco Bell representatives were rather dismissive of the traffic and congestion complaints associated with locating the drive-thru at this location. Taco Bell representatives don't think the drive-thru will make the already bad traffic any worse. Taco Bell representatives also presented numbers to demonstrate the drive-thru would have fewer trips generated than a sit-down restaurant, but those numbers appear to be misleading. We oppose the special use application for this drive-thru restaurant for the following reasons. 1, the proposed special use is not consistent with the adopted plans and policies, including the Bearden Village Opportunities Plan and the Kingston Pike Commercial Corridor. The adopted plans encourage mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly oriented developments, and by definition, a drive-thru does not support this plan or vision. 2, the proposed special use is not permitted as of right in the CG zone and therefore is not in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the zoning code. 3, the proposed special use will significantly detract from the immediate environment, creating additional traffic congestion and safety concerns within a school zone with 2 schools. 4, the proposed special use will injure the value of adjacent residential property by noise, lights, fumes, odors, and especially traffic and congestion, not to mention the late night operating hours. The proposed special use would undoubtedly contribute to additional traffic through residential streets from both Taco Bell customers and Kingston Pike drivers using these residential streets as a cut-through to avoid the congestion on Kingston Pike. For these reasons, we request that you deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, Keith Britt, 506 Knowlton Drive. I did sign up to speak in opposition. I realize there's very limited time. I will only take a minute if that's possible.
You guys okay with that? Okay, please proceed.
Keith Britt, 506 Knowlton Drive. This is just the new information that hasn't been presented already. I am a statistician and a professional researcher. Taco Bell drive-through in 2019, it's estimated that 90% of their sales is generated through drive-through traffic. That has since fallen off since the pandemic to about 70 to 80% in 2022. A 2022 study by InTouch Insights ranked Taco Bell as the 3rd fastest drive-through in America behind Chick-fil-A and McDonald's. And a 2021 Yum Brands press release states that they see the next decade of commercial investment to be in their drive-through operations. They see that as the future emphasis of their brand. This plays out in this specific location where they've only planned for about 8 sit-down tables, but they're trying to accommodate 11 cars simultaneously in the drive-through. You work out on the math on that, that's a car entering or exiting this location every 3 minutes. And just a bit of statistical analysis shows that even if this special use would only increase the possibility of a car accident with a pedestrian, a bicyclist, school child, God forbid, by 1% on any given occasion, within the first 69 days, it's better chances than not that something bad is going to happen. Within the first 365 days, it's almost a near certainty at 97.5% chance of a vehicle collision with a pedestrian, bicyclist, or another vehicle. I drive my kids to preschool through this location 5 times a day, well, 4 times technically each day, every weekday. It is just increasingly onerous to pass through this intersection because of the backup on North Shore, particularly on this westbound side of the road. Any other special use I could get down with, but anything drive-through restaurant, a gas station, that's just simply introducing way too much danger to the area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. All right, that's all the opposition. The applicant, would you like to proceed?
Before I get started, may I ask for additional time so the rest of our team
Sure,
can...
you'll get equal time.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Hill and Commissioners. I am Sarah McGowan, Project Coordinator at GPD Group. I am accompanied by my manager, Jim Neilinger, as well as Heather Evans, Taco Bell Operations Regional Manager. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon to hear our request for special use approval to allow for a drive-through. There is a lot of information that I'd like to share, so I have to move quickly to provide this information within our allotted time. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have after the presentation. We appreciated time to speak and meet with the community since the April hearing. We met with the leaders of Westwood HOA, Bearden Elementary PTSO, and the principal of KAEC, as well as reached out to the Bearden Council. Our team, along with Taco Bell, hosted a neighborhood meeting on Monday at KAC Auditorium to meet with neighbors to discuss the project. While not all opinions were changed, a number of attendees came up to us after the meeting and stated that after seeing our presentation and hearing our answers, they had changed their minds and no longer opposed the project. However, pedestrian safety and increased traffic along Kingston Pike were the two main concerns discussed at the meeting. Currently on site, there is not a designated driveway. Cars can enter and exit the site off any point along Kingston Pike. Observing car pickup the last few days, some of the cars are parking parallel to Kingston Pike on the property. When the dismissal bell rings and the car pickup line begins to move, they jut back onto Kingston Pike to rejoin the line. Their parking inside the property does not allow for people to safely walk across the property. We are proposing to narrow the access to one driveway and install a sidewalk to improve safety. I'll discuss the traffic concern later on. The first document that you have that was passed out before the meeting shows how the building has changed from 2018, when the building was operational, to last week. As the building has become unoccupied, it has passed its usable life. The existing building is currently built on top of the retaining wall that is holding up the access drive to the schools. The retaining wall along the north portion of the property has failed, resulting in a collapse. All three walls need to be repaired. The second document in your packet is the proposed renderings for this project. I believe that Mr. Reynolds was able to pass them out to you before today's meeting. Our team created 4 different viewpoints showing the existing view and the proposed view. The retaining walls along the west, north, and east sides will be rebuilt, and a 6-foot opaque fence will be installed on top of the walls. The renderings also show that this property sits between 10 to 15 feet below the school and neighboring properties. The 6-foot fence will help block visibility of the site from the schools and neighbors. The third document is a colored landscape plan that shows how the proposed site layout and plantings. The entire site is currently building or asphalt. We are proposing to have 37.5% green space. Another document in your packet are the ITE trips studies. We have modeled different uses: retail similarly sized to existing building on site, sit-down restaurant sized to existing building on site, and a 2,787 square foot fast food restaurant with drive-through. While all 3 of these have similar trip generation numbers, it should be noted that fast food with drive-through has a 55% passerby rate. That means that 55% of the trips are already on the road. The retail building would capture 0% of passerby traffic, making it a destination. A drive-through fast food restaurant such as Taco Bell would be the least impactful of all 3 uses on adding trips to the road. A main concern of the neighbors is the increased traffic between school drop-off and pickup times. The next document in your packet shows the average sale data for the closest Taco Bells, 5 of them. We have marked on the charts the 2 school drop-off pickup times to show how they correlate with the projected sales or transactions for this location. Taco Bell is not a busy breakfast location, and only 5% of the sale transactions occur before 9 a.m. The peak times for the Taco Bell in the area are from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., making up 23% of the transactions. The final document is the photometric plan for the project. Taco Bell uses fully shielded lights. With the shields and being located below the school and residential neighbors, the lighting will be contained on site. If you have any questions after hearing all this information, completely understand, and we're here to answer any questions you have. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jim Neilinger. I reside at 1900 Wilkinson Crossing, Merida, Georgia. I am the Jim that Sarah introduced as being the project manager, and I would like to speak to the traffic concerns. So originally, we were reading through the comments, and a lot of the comments wanted to keep the existing building and reuse it for another use. So we, in our traffic count, used it as a restaurant, as a sit-down restaurant. And a sit-down restaurant at the square footage of the building is now our accurate traffic counts that are showing there. I know that they used the Applebee's as an example. Applebee's has not approached the seller about this property. No small restaurant would be able to put the investment into this property that needs to be done to fix the issues that are there. Now, why would a Taco Bell, if we're not going to, Taco Bell, like they said, is passerby capture for the most part. Most people are driving by and they stop and pull in. Will there be trips in and out of the driveway? Yes. Will we add significant traffic to the road that's out there? No. There are other drive-thrus out there, and I know everybody keeps talking about Chick-fil-A and Starbucks. My company works with Chick-fil-A and Starbucks. Chick-fil-A has a completely different business model and a completely different drive-thru scheme than Taco Bell does. Starbucks as well. The Chick-fil-A that's out there, I understand why there would be a problem the way it's laid out. The way that Taco Bell is being laid out is completely different. The drive-thru pickup window wraps all the way around the building, and the entire parking lot would be used for additional stacking past the 15 cars you see stacked in our actual drive-thru. So the chances that cars would get out onto the road are basically non-existent in this, whereas the Chick-fil-A drive-thru, the canopy is about 5 to 6 cars maybe off of the road. So when you pull in and somebody's in that canopy, you're stuck out on the street. You're not going to come into the site. If the city is interested in any improvements on the Starbucks, I have some ideas. I designed Starbucks as well. But talking about the Taco Bell, this site will not back up out onto the road, and it will be passerby traffic for the most part. Just to clarify something Sarah said, it's AM and PM is the 55% passerby capture. So that's the peak rates. So when IT looks at this, this use, they look at the most intense times and they figure out that's passerby. So retail has no passerby, fast food has passerby, and sit-down restaurant has passerby. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wrong way, excuse me. Good afternoon. My name is Tony Capiello. I'm president of People's Development Company, the owner of this property, and I'm speaking in favor of this special use. I wanted to give a brief history of this property since we've owned it and talk about why I think that the placing of Taco Bell here is one of the least impactful uses that I could do when redeveloping this property. I live in this community. I work in this community. My office is in Bearden, and my family has had property in this community since 1945. I'll say that I'm a self-proclaimed preservationist, which means I try to save buildings as best I can or repurpose them. I see value in every building. So, for instance, I partnered with my tenants for a Bridge Brewing Company and turned a 1940s garage into a brewery, which the community has embraced. I've taken my father's old roller skating rink that was pretty dilapidated and put anthropology in there and helped to build the retail community. I'm now working on redeveloping the Naples property as well. I will save buildings if I can. This property, though, befuddles me and is a bit of an issue. Primarily, I had a tenant for the property several years ago. It would have also required tearing down the old Cas Walker building. But in the spring of 2018, we had a 100-year flood event, and the hydrostatic pressure, the rain that hit the wall, pushed the wall down. The cost of doing that is almost prohibitive. And this is a privately owned property that I would have to finance and or work with a partner to finance it.
Mr. Capiello, we are out of time unless commission wants to extend. Okay, we've got, everybody okay with 2 minutes? All right, 2 minutes.
All right, I'll try to be brief. Anyway, this property is, in my opinion, not every old piece of property is historic. This is an old piece of property, as famous as Cas Walker might have been. Nothing really famous went on there except the selling of groceries. So anyway, it's filled with asbestos. I also have to tear the building down. It has no functional utility. Someone suggested building a high-rise there. Could you imagine the traffic that would create a multi-use type building? If I brought in a specialty restaurant, let's say I used the other night the example of J. Alexander's. There would be only one J. Alexander's in the size of the town that Knoxville is. And if I put it there, people from all over the community would come to J. Alexander's. What kind of problem would that create in traffic? As good and delicious as Taco Bell is, there are 18 of them in Knox County. So no one from Farragut or Fountain City is going to drive to this new Taco Bell. It is to serve the community. And so if you happen to be in the community or live in the community, you may go to the Taco Bell. I give careful consideration to every property that I own and try to bring the best tenant in. In this case, I think Taco Bell is least impactful and the traffic that it will create is minimal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So we had extended, a minute, 20 seconds roughly. In spirit of fairness, I'd say we give the opposition a minute, 20, was it a minute 20 seconds? Is that where we were? Roughly. If you guys, if you all have anything meaningful that you haven't already shared, we'll provide a minute, 20 seconds.
In regard to the appropriateness of using an Applebee's as a comparison, I would like to direct you to my comment that I left on the Planning Commission website where I explained all my math, explained where there's a hyperlink explaining where I got the data for a high turnover sit-down restaurant and what an example of one of those would be. It's obviously not an example that matches the property, and using it to be the contrast for a drive-through restaurant is inappropriate. Furthermore, Miller's going to speak about this, I believe, but the tenor and general whatever of the meeting that happened on Monday has also been misrepresented by the representatives of Taco Bell.
A few things of note. Mr. Capiello is not a resident of Westwood or Forest Heights. I actually hosted the meeting in good faith. I feel like we should say we co-hosted that meeting together. It was not Taco Bell hosting the meeting. None of the backup drive-through, when we think about Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, Starbucks, I mean, not Chick-fil-A or Starbucks, when we think about Kingston Pike or Cumberland Avenue, none of those backups then fall into a residential area. That falls into a commercial area. So I think you want to keep that. Also, the anecdotal data that people came up and thanked them. We've only had 5 comments in favor of the property submitted publicly since that meeting, and we're at over 130 submitted on record against. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's take it to commission here. Commissioner Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've thought about this quite a bit, this particular case, and I've been over there, of course, several times. And my thoughts are this: one, I don't see how having a Taco Bell drive-through here is detrimental to the neighborhood. I don't see where traffic's going to come out of that and have anything to do with the neighborhood that's behind it. I think the Taco Bell that they proposed looks way better than the building that they have there. It's located, I've heard a lot of argument about we shouldn't have it here, a commercial. It's commercially zoned property. And it previously, if I'm not mistaken, was zoned where this drive-through would be allowed by right. And through the zoning revisions that we went through, it's been changed to a special use. So it's not a contrary use to what the property is zoned. It's just a special use that requires us to take a look at it. And I think we have. My feelings are, if we're not going to have a drive-through on Kingston Pike, which is a state highway, basically, and the state will control the access to the property and off the property. Where are you going to have one? Traffic-wise, in my mind, I don't see anybody from anywhere else leaving their house and driving here that wouldn't have already been there themselves. It's more of an opportunistic stop than it would be a destination, so to speak. So I'm at this point ready to make a motion that we approve it for staff recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the special use per staff recommendation by Commissioner Ross, seconded by Commissioner Smith. We still have more lights. Let's go to Commissioner Midas.
Thank you, Chairman Hill. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Roth, I agree. I will say that the previous zoning ordinance, which allowed for most of these non-pedestrian uses during this stretch of Kingston Pike, that zoning ordinance was drafted in the 1960s. That stretch of Kingston Pike has changed tremendously in that amount of time. The attitudes of the neighbors and the neighborhoods and developments around that area have changed. You know, we just passed a use on review on consent, just further up Kingston Pike, no more than a mile. And I think, you know, that area is applicable. I think that's a great location for a drive-through. Right now, we're looking at a place that is surrounded by 2 schools, and it's going to be, now and in the future, an even more pedestrian-related area. Once we approve this use on review or this special use for a drive-through, it's not going to change. And we have to think about that in the future. That's why this is a special use. You know, the only comments that have been posted online in favor of the drive-through are ones that think that this building is going to look aesthetically better than what's currently there. And it's a shame that the property owner has been derelict in its duty to take care of this piece of property, even though there's been conditions that have maybe warranted some disrepair of the building. You know, if you are a true member of the community, you need to take care of your property. And you need to be a good neighbor. And that should not be a reason to grant a special use. I am not in favor of the special use for this. I did mention the last time that, you know, with the 2 schools, pedestrians, kids having to walk to school, a greenway right there is no better place for, there's no place for a drive-through in this location. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Perez.
Thank you, Chairman. My main concern is that there's only one access point. I feel like if we compare other drive-throughs in the area, whether it's financial or fast food, they are multiple entryways. If there is an emergency situation, getting an emergency vehicle in there with the flow of traffic, I think that's problematic. There's no way to make a left turn once exiting, because if there's a congestion pileup, no one's going to be able to make a left turn and probably encourage the flow of traffic to go through the school and around to that next stoplight. I don't know if you can demonstrate that, but going through the car wash and then exiting so that you can make a left turn, I think that would be encouraged in this situation, and just brings up concerns.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
Okay. We're having a light issue over here, so Commissioner Huber is actually turning on. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I am really glad that Commissioner Midas mentioned the consent passage that happened on a drive-through just further down Kingston Pike, because when I was looking at those cases, I recognized in my own rationale that the one that was further down Kingston Pike, that didn't have the same congestion problems. I'm not saying it's, you know, peachy. Everyone experiences traffic, but the congestion problems just are not the same. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think there's a big difference between these two, while they are both use on review drive-throughs. And I think that I concur with your point that the code was changed for a reason, that we are being tasked to look at this because not all drive-throughs are the same, because they may be in different contexts, to the point of why we passed one on consent and why this one has 145, 47 comments, 130 some of those being to the negative. We have to listen to that. These are parents, business owners, people that are traveling that area all the time, and they're raising their hand and saying, this is not safe. If I had a different experience to contest that, maybe I would say something else, but whenever I go to that area of town, that specific area is a complete bottleneck. And I think Mr. Callaway, or the owner of Callaway's, was speaking to people, strategizing as to when they will go to that area of town. I'm one of those. So I wanted to concur with those points that Commissioner Midas said. I also wanted to point out that the developer commented on two other properties that had been created, Abridged and Anthropology. If there was Abridged 2 or Anthropology 2 going into this location, I would have no problem. I do not believe that those properties would generate the kind of additional traffic or additional problematic traffic that this does. The drawings are very crisp, very clean. They show a location that would be certainly look better than the building that is there, but the fact that a previous property owner has been derelict is not what we are really dealing with right now. What we're dealing with, is this an appropriate location for a drive-through? Not if drive-throughs are bad or good, but is this a particular location correct? And I cannot support this for that reason. I also just want to make one pull-out comment, and this came from Finbar Saunders from the Bearden Council. This was sometime in the last couple of days, saying that as neighbors, we support projects that will improve our Bearden neighborhood. We do not believe another Taco Bell will do this. I think that's just straight to the point, and I will not be supporting this.
Thank you. Commissioner Huber.
Yes, thank you. Got it, thank you. Yeah, I know this is a tough one, especially, we've gotten so many comments on it, and I can understand there's always, a lot of unknown, especially with respect to commercial real estate and how it works. But I am familiar with commercial real estate, and it really, this type of use really does, in my opinion, generally service the existing traffic, not, as they were talking about, coming in from other areas. It will have peak times and it'll have slower times, but generally it's going to service the traffic that's already there, that's already backed up. One thing I want to note is, from city engineering and staff and the civil engineer that worked on it, I do like the way they've designed it from a stacking perspective. And I don't think it's going to be stacking out onto Kingston Pike. I think, it may get back into the parking lot a little bit, but I've seen some designs, that will roll out into the road a lot. I really don't think this is. It also, how they've got the drive-through in the service boxes where they'll be talking back and forth, located on the west side of the building versus on the back side, so there's not noise from the box going back into the existing neighborhood. So I do appreciate that. One thing, Commissioner Midas brought it up. I know it's not always about the aesthetics of it, but one of the things I do recognize is we've got a completely impervious area there right now. It's 100% impervious with the roof lines as well as 100% parking lot. This plan shows about 40% becomes pervious between landscaping and grass and things like that will greatly help us with filtering stormwater and going a long way towards that. I like to see that, and I'm sure that's through the codes and through staff and everybody looking at that, but I appreciate them doing that. And the last thing, there's been some talk about, almost a conflict between the drive-through and walkability or pedestrian traffic, that type of thing. And the turning movements in and out of those situations are very slow. When you pull in, you're in line, you inch up, and then you eventually pull out. I just don't see necessarily a conflict between pedestrian traffic and a drive-through because everything tends to move so slow at that point. So with all those, it's a tough decision, but I'll be supporting this.
Commissioner Shelso.
So I've been on the fence on this one, and I'm partial towards a Taco Bell because I work a few buildings down from it, and I do very much like Taco Bell. But not letting that influence me. I've been on the fence, and hearing some of my commissioners here, Commissioner Perez, your comment especially about looking on the map right now at facilities that do have drive-throughs. Most all do have some other additional way to get, either it's split up one entrance and one out onto Kingston Pike, or like the Chick-fil-A, you can go back onto that other road, or the Kroger. And I think that that's pretty important. And a lot of the other drive-throughs, I know I'm not really supposed to look specifically at the applicant, but banks' drive-throughs are ancillary to their building. It's not necessarily their primary driver of traffic. You can walk into the bank and do the exact same transaction. So additionally, this body, we looked at a change that we recommended to City Council that I don't think they've acted on yet. They had a workshop on recently with the change to the CG2, CG3, build to zone line. And we drew that line at Bearden Road, which is a little further west of this property. That discussion was that we want to continue to see the Bearden Village area develop in a pedestrian-oriented way with buildings closer to Kingston Pike. And I don't see how this helps that. So I think I'm now against it after hearing many of my fellow commissioners.
All right. Commissioner Browning.
Thank you, Chairman Hill. We keep talking about, our Bearden neighborhood and, the current condition it's in, which we do have to remember that Capiello real estate is a big reason why the Bearden neighborhood is the way it is now. They have done a fabulous job going in there and redoing these buildings and repurposing them. And, if a representative from Capiello shows up and says they don't think it's financially feasible to make this building into something other than the proposed use, I believe him. I think the one question I would have is to maybe just some of the Taco Bell representatives. We've always been told by our parents that nothing happens good after midnight. And as I understand, this is going to be open till 4 a.m. in the morning. Are there any kind of increased crime concerns?
Do you want to take it?
Hello, my name is Heather Evans, and I'm the operator of the corporate Taco Bells in Georgia and Tennessee. And this restaurant right now is currently planned to be open from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m., so it would not be till 4 a.m. And the crime rate does not increase because at the time you're open, it's really, we have a lot of policies and procedures that we have in place to make sure we're keeping a safe environment for our employees and our guests. And it's really around our execution of those policies that impacts the safety and reduces the crime rate. So we don't see, and especially in this area, if you look, you can look at the other Taco Bells, we have not had a burglary issue or robbery issue or anything of that nature in this area.
Thank you for that explanation.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, are you done, Commissioner Browning? Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, and again, I just want to go back to one that we just said to another community, we don't care what you want, we're doing what we want. But that directly affected the community. They were asking because of high crime rates and homelessness. And here, again, I live in East Knoxville, and this is where in our community it becomes East Knoxville gets dumped on, West Knoxville gets what they want. I don't think that's the case fully, but that's the perception out there. So I think we need to be careful. The second thing regarding this property, as Mr. Capiello said, it is asbestos laden. During a 100-year flood caused the wall to collapse, which honestly is partially unsafe for the neighborhood behind it right this minute. But I also want to remind everyone, because if you did not grow up in Knoxville, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this and probably some hate mail, but Kaz Walker had a lot of racist innuendos in all of his commercials. Tearing down this building and getting rid of one more vestige of that racist past and letting something else come in that will be a support to this community in a positive way is something that I quite frankly, I'd love to see it just shelved. I'd like us to rid our past of things that have harmed the community. Again, no traffic, as our Commissioner Roth said, is going to be going directly into this neighborhood. It's staying on Kingston Pike. I addressed the second drive-through issue a while back because I was concerned with the second exit because that is the main entrance into the school. I feel like that's too much congestion going into that little side street up by the car wash and Taco Bell. So that's why I'm supporting and giving the second. But again, these are just some things that we need to think about. Let's not pit neighborhoods against neighborhoods because we're listening to one side of town and not the other. And let's just get rid of a problem or eyesore that really is sitting there with asbestos right next to our kids. Let's get rid of it. And there's my mic.
Right. Commissioner Higgins.
Primarily, I want to comment that I think that that's a gross mischaracterization of the previous case and how that conversation was handled. I don't. The attitude was not about, and I think I can speak for everyone saying that it was not anyone trying to say that we don't care what the neighbors think, and I think, or even the part of town, we were specifically talking about walkability and access. And I think that that's still the same conversation here that's been going on is walkability and access and safety for pedestrians. So I think that this conversation, regardless of who is on which side, is very similar. And so I don't really appreciate that comment. But I also do I agree with a lot of the fellow commissioners about some of the comments about this, and I do think that a drive-through here in this part of Kingston Pike is not really in the spirit of where Bearden, the direction that Bearden is trying to go from everything that I've seen over the past few years, where it seems like Bearden is trying to be more pedestrian-focused and pedestrian-friendly, and I not to say that people can't walk into a drive-through or take the sidewalk. The sidewalks on this part of Kingston Pike are pretty rough as it is, but and then also to the comment of the other drive-through facility that we approved, they had a deceleration lane on Kingston Pike, and so there's a little bit more room for cars pulling off and everything. So I do think that this is a very specific scenario, and I agree with other commissioners. I don't think that a drive-through here is really in character with what's around it. So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. Commissioner Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually going to comment on, I've always been a big proponent of citizen input in our cases. But I don't think it's incumbent upon us to pick and choose who we're going to listen to and who we're not. And I think this case, again, I go back to the zoning that's there. I go back to what this property is now and what it will be. And I would argue that walkability, if you look at the renderings after this Taco Bell is built, it would be easier to walk across one lane of traffic than people getting on and off Kingston Pike and parking in the parking spots that are lined up along Kingston Pike with no barrier to entry or exit. And the other thing I'd like to do is hear from traffic. We've talked about traffic now for about 45 minutes, and we hadn't heard from them about their opinion about how this thing gets laid out and who makes the decisions. So I'd like to hear from them on that.
Curtis, I guess the question is, do you have a specific question?
Well,
or
I
want
want
to know the impact
we've
of
talked
traffic?
about traffic and what the impact is and which way you're going to go and who makes the decisions on how that happens. And is it already made, or is the state still reviewing this and they get to determine how it works? That's my question. Your mic's not working, Curtis.
Maybe this one will work. I can't speak on what the state currently is saying about it, but I can say that we've had a chance to look at it and did a little bit of research at this location. Just to the east of here, there's a TDOT count station that's been counted for several years. Data that goes back to maybe 2001. Surprisingly, the traffic in this corridor has been on a decline. 2004 was when it saw the highest amount of traffic, roughly a little over maybe 22,000 trips per day. Right now, the last, I'll say, useful data is from 2019. We have some data from 2020 and 2021, but that's obviously not necessarily accurate due to COVID and folks staying at home. But the 2019 data showed that there's about 19,000 trips per day in the general area on Kingston Pike. And if you look at that and you do look at the amount of traffic that would be generated by the Taco Bell, the Taco Bell would roughly generate about 1,000 trips per day. But it's been mentioned that there's a pass-by reduction, and that's a real thing that traffic engineers look at. Locally, we use a 40% reduction, not the 55 that was mentioned earlier. And so you're talking about reducing the trips by about 400. So really, it's only generating about 600 trips per day, roughly. And that works out to about 3% of the current traffic on the road. It's very, very minimal when you look at it as the overall corridor. It's also much less than the corridor has historically had on it. If you add 600 trips back in, you're still less than 20,000 trips per day, which is nowhere near what the annual average was several years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah. Director Welch.
I do want to point out that the congestion that you see of that section of Kingston Pike is primarily due to the intersections there at Kingston Pike and Bearden Place and Kingston Pike and North Shore. TDOT has about a $20 million investment program for that intersection, those two intersections, adding additional capacity and signal improvements and laneage at North Shore and Kingston Pike intersection. They have preliminary designs already. It's been studied for the last 15 plus years. I would anticipate that within the next 3 to 5 years that intersection will be improved again, going from the North Shore Kings Pike intersection up towards Bearden with additional lanes and turning movements at North Shore Kingston Pike. I mean, that is the primary reason you have the backups all the way up through, the west past Bearden Elementary School. It's the Kingston Pike North Shore intersection.
Okay. Commissioner Adams.
I appreciate what Curtis shared and Mr. Welch, because I do think what you're saying is accurate in the experience. Like, there are problems upstream or downstream that are causing the problems that are in front of that particular property. But I think that doesn't mean we should add on to that problem or do something that is going to mitigate the alleviation measures that are being put in place by what you just described, the new things that are coming with those investments. I don't think that we should be looking at this property to add into the problems that are already there. I think looking at how we continue those improvements with each choice that we make as this body is where we should put our attention.
Mr. Reynolds, would you like to add anything? I know this was your case, and just an opportunity for you to share any comments or sentiments from the staff report.
I'm not sure if I have too much to add from the staff report itself. I would say that this is a tough one for me to review and give a recommendation on. I would have much rather have just kind of kicked it down the road to y'all to discuss and make a decision one way or the other. I think what weighed on me was the implementation of the Bearden Village Plan to date, and recommendations for zoning and the pedestrian improvements in the area, particularly along Kingston Pike, and I guess a program for incremental or comprehensive improvements to pedestrian pedestrian this infrastructure. And so I think the Kingston Pike itself is not going to be the pedestrian-oriented front. Obviously, it does make connections. It is a major east-west connector for this community. You can't really get to North Shore without going on Kingston Pike very easily. So it does play a crucial role in that pedestrian network. The zoning part of it was the other issue that I kind of run into is the Bearden Village Plan talks about creating zoning that allows mix of uses, which the CG1 zone does. It talks about requiring parking to the rear or hopefully to the side. The CG1 zone does not do that. It does. Bearden Village Plan talks about requiring buildings to be built up to the road. The CG1 zone does not do that. If it was CG2 or CG3, it would. So I guess I saw where there was parts that were still trying to get there. We didn't quite have all the pieces in place yet to say that this is going to turn into what the village plan wants to be. I think the areas that are side streets and Homburg Place are better suited for pedestrian-oriented development where pedestrians feel comfortable walking. But that Kingston Pike is going to be a major component of that pedestrian system. So long term, it does need to gear itself towards the pedestrian. I'm not sure if this facility will hamper that one way or the other in the grand scheme of things, but that's how I felt on it.
Thank you for your comments. And because there was seemingly so much interest in this case, one, I want to just share, really for the public benefit, how we're supposed to review special uses. And I'd like to call on Attorney Blakeney. And, some of us might like Taco Bell, some of us may not like Taco Bell or some other use. We don't have really the latitude to choose in that manner. And so we do have 6 very defined criteria, and you're going to see probably a variety of votes regardless of the criteria, but I think it's important to understand that we're basically bound to 6 criteria, and I'll let Attorney Blakeney describe that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So because this is, of course, a special use review, you're looking at section 16.2 of the zoning code, which tells us that the listing of a special use within a zoning district doesn't mean that there's an assurance or a presumption that the special use is to be approved, but each special use has to be evaluated on an individual basis, and you have to rely, as the chairman just noted, that there are a number of specific criteria that are supposed to be considered. The first is whether the use is consistent with adopted plans and policies, including the general plan and the one-year plan. The second standard for consideration is whether the use is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of this particular zoning code. The third is whether the use is compatible with the character of the neighborhood where it is proposed and with the size and location of buildings in the vicinity. Next, you consider whether the use will not significantly injure the value of adjacent property or by noise, lights, fumes, odors, vibration, traffic, congestion, or other impacts detract from the immediate environment. Next, the use is not of a nature or so located as to draw substantial additional traffic through residential streets. And finally, the nature of development in the surrounding area is not such as to pose a potential hazard to the proposed use or to create an undesirable environment for the proposed use.
Thank you very much. Okay, any questions? I see no other lights, no other comments. So we have a motion to approve the special use and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Let's call a roll.
Commissioner Uten? I'm sorry, Commissioner Uten?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
I thought I was loud enough.
really, and I read the staff recommendation, but I didn't really hear it. And I think Mr. Reynolds, the way he walked through all that, helped me read the staff recommendation. So I'm going to go with staff on this one, say yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
As Commissioner Uten, I'm a little bit torn on this one. You know, when I look at the zoning district, which is a CG1, and I look at how it's set up, it's really not in line with what the original plan for Bearden was. I'm going to vote yes on this, but I also ask staff to look at coming back to us at some point with a new set of standards, or zoning standards for that corridor, that section of corridor, to get it more in line. Because right now, under the current zoning, there are no minimum lot widths, no minimum lot sizes, and so most developers will take the easiest route and cut the property up small lots as they can get and sell. That means more access cuts, more conflicts with vehicles. So I think we've got to really change our code in that particular district. But yes, my vote is yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Huber?
Yes.
Commissioner Scelto?
No.
Commissioner Perez?
No.
Commissioner Browning?
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins?
No.
Commissioner Levinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Adams?
No.
Commissioner Roth?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Midas? Commissioner Hill?
You know, a lot of us at this table here, you know, are feeling mixed feelings on this particular item. I'm the president of Bearden Village Council, and Commissioner Midas is vice president. We have a lot of dear friends out in the audience here that participate. Just looking at staff recommendation, looking at the conditions in Bearden with the sidewalks, the traffic, the T-Dot, major arterial. I'd probably win a popularity contest if I voted no on this, but this seems to be, looking at the criteria, I just don't feel like I can vote against it. I think it's appropriate to say yes to this, and so I'm going to vote in favor of it. It's a tough decision, and maybe City Council can finish the job if need be.
Thank you. There's 8 yes and 5 no.
Okay. Motion passes. All right. What's that? Yeah. Let's take a 5-minute break. All right, let's, can you hear me? Nope, 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 nope. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Testing,
Hello?
testing. Oh,
Hello? Testing. Testing. Testing, testing.
all right, we don't have
Testing.
these.
Everybody's out? I punched this thing. Hello? Try your mic.
Hello.
Try it again.
Hello. Hello.
That got it. Testing. There we go. All right. Hey, let's reconvene. Oh, wow. Have you got a slip sheet for that? Oh, you did? Okay. What was it? Okay. We're going to start with item number 17. This is it right here. Yeah, 17. Okay. Hey, before we get started, I just want to mention Director Welch. This is his last meeting as the Executive Director of Planning, although it's his fourth, I think, fourth go at this. Isn't that right? Fourth?
Yeah, I'm a slow learner.
Yeah, so he sat in this seat over 38 years, 4 times as executive director, and I tell you, it's been a pleasure to work with him. We're going to miss him. He's not going to retire just yet, but he's going to go back and oversee the TPO and hopefully hire his replacement in the near future. And then after 38 years of service, he will be retiring when, Director Welch?
End of August.
End of August. Okay. So anyway, he's much appreciated. I'd like to give him a hand. And you'll be sorely missed.
Mr. Chairman, before you go, can we postpone his retirement until Kingston Pike and North Shore is fixed?
That's a good idea. All right. Item number 17. This is the proposed amendments to Article 11.1.b, required parking for renovation of existing buildings and change of use, and Article 11.1.c, expansion or improvement of existing parking lots. Let's see, who handled this case?
This is Peter Ahrens from City Codes.
All right, Director Ahrens, would you like to speak on this matter?
I'm happy to speak on this matter. I'm Peter Ahrens, the Director of Plans Review and Building Inspections. I'll give you a little bit of history. Back in 2017, the city updated the parking requirements, and during that time, we worked with Scenic Knoxville. The problem was like Kmart parking lots that were vast, and we implemented a 50% rule, which, big picture, if somebody invests 50% of the value of the property, it triggers bringing the parking lot into compliance. 5-6 years into this program, we're seeing a lack of investment in certain areas of town because their property values are significantly lower. And so I personally have seen a lot of projects die on the vine because of this. We went back to Scenic Knoxville, worked personally with Joyce Feld. She wasn't able to be here today. She said she was willing to, but she had a previous engagement. The goal here with these rules or proposed changes would be to allow existing parking that is legal and safe to remain. If you increase parking, you can build along the existing lines, whereas with a new parking lot, you might have a 10-foot setback for a buffer yard. If you add at a 10-foot where the existing is only 5 foot, you create some level of dysfunction. So the rules indicate that you can continue to build along those lines, but you will have to landscape that. And whether or not you have the 10 foot, as long as you've got at least 3 foot setback, you'll be landscaping it. And that's where we talked with Casey Kraus to make sure there was adequate soil volume to support landscape. But overall, big picture, recognizing that we do have existing parking lots that are safe, recognizing that the current rules really are impeding development in some of the lower priced areas of town, and we think this is a viable solution. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Midas.
So I took 18 off of consent also because it's in conjunction with 17, and I appreciate Commissioner Higgins for taking this one off consent. You know, I know that 2 years plus went into creating this parking ordinance. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember the process being very arduous. There was a lot of input from the community. The stakeholder group that was on it included a variety of individuals, not just Joyce Feld and people from scenic Knoxville, but contractors as well that came up with this. And I guess my concern with the 50% rule is that if you eliminate that, the only chance that we have for improvements to be made to a parking lot would be if they completely raise the building. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So someone could leave one side of a building up and not have to make improvements to that parking lot. Is that right?
Sure.
So, you know, I guess as a community member, when this parking ordinance passed, I was excited because what it did is it gave maximums to amount of parking so that you couldn't have these huge Kmart parking lots. And it allowed for green space, not only in the parking lot, but in perimeters to basically beautify our community. And while I do feel for some of these lower income properties that maybe are burdened, you know, by just eliminating that 50%, you're eliminating any opportunity you have for other properties to be improved and for green space to be added to our city. Is there a process that some of these lower property owners could go through to get a variance on that parking or to work around it if they did want to develop it, but it was too much of a financial burden?
I'm going to say no, because the variances are based on a hardship, and
Is that not a hardship?
the financial end, no.
I guess I don't think I'm going to be able to support this. And I guess I would like to send it back to you, the planning staff, to consider some other option, because I feel like if we pass this now, enforcement of this parking ordinance there's going to be reasons and too many loopholes for anyone to be able to actually enforce these changes that the community wanted. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Higgins.
Can I respond real quick?
Sure.
As the director, if somebody tore down 3 of the 4 walls, I would say it was raised. The reason I said they could do that is because I don't know who will be here after me. Loopholes will always be available, but understanding the spirit and the intent, if I call people to the court all the time trying to loop through inappropriately. There's always going to be some level of judgment, but that's it.
Well, so as the one that pulled this off consent, I'll clarify first. I completely agree with this. I think that this is a good move. I see it playing out where this criteria does cause undue burden. The reason I pulled it off was to get a clarification, and I would have asked this on Tuesday, but ran out of time, but with item number 5 that's added to it, required parking will be recalculated with a change of use or new addition. My question is, if there was a situation where you have an existing building and maybe it doesn't require, it would not have met that 50% threshold, but they add on an addition or maybe do a change of use that's not, a complete overhaul and not as much of a lower budget, would that then trigger having to build additional parking spaces?
Yeah, if there is an addition and it doesn't hit the 50%, yeah, you have to comply with the parking counts. And that's one where, under the current rules, we do see I've seen several people come in for variances because their existing parking lot is 5 feet off the property line. And in order to meet the current, that addition would have to be set back further, and it makes the parking lot unfunctional. So they're going to BZA getting variances for those reasons. But to answer your question, this is a policy right now that anytime you have an addition or a change of use, we recalculate. We thought that putting it in the code would provide some clarity.
I think that's a good point. And so in that scenario, as it stands, it doesn't matter how much money you spend. If you do an addition or a change of use, you're recalculating the number of parking spaces. And like I said, I've seen this play out many of times, and so I think that this is a really good move. So I would actually go ahead and make the motion to approve this and as it's written.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Higgins, seconded by Commissioner Huber to approve per staff recommendation. Let's see here, Commissioner Smith? Oh, Commissioner Huber / Barger?
Thank you. I did have a clarification on that too. So when you're not redoing the parking lot, how does that intertwine with the storm water regulations? I mean, is there, when you're saying the 50% rule and you're getting into the parking lots in the storm?
There's 3 different 50% rules that are extremely confusing to all of our customers.
Gotcha.
That's one of the side benefits of getting it out of zoning.
And we don't need to get into all that, but I do applaud you guys for certainly reevaluating, this, because I think it's important for us to invest money in a lot of areas in town, and it gives the developers an opportunity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
And going back to Commissioner Midas for a second, can you help me understand this a little bit? Can you give me some finite examples in the most recent past where, if this had been enacted, that things might have happened, or would we have ended up with any of the scenarios, as described, where it could have been a partial demolition with things still left? Are there, what precipitated this? Give me some examples of why this is, I'm just trying to help understand this one just a little bit better.
Sure. If you've got an office on Magnolia and a florist wants to go in there, it's a change of use. Any redevelopment of that vacant space is essentially going to hit that 50% threshold. So that means they have to tear up asphalt, they have to redesign, and they walk away. I would say the best example that I have of getting rid of the sea of asphalt would be West Town Mall, when I think it was Tesla went in on the southwest corner. We got a couple of landscape islands with the current regulations. Those are the 2 examples that I can give you.
So just to add as another, Commissioner Smith, it's quite plausible to have, let's say, 2 identical buildings, one in, let's just say Bearden, that could be worth $3 million, and one on Magnolia that could be worth $300,000. And really, same square footage. I mean that's a very plausible scenario where the The one on Magnolia would be limited to $150,000 before it has to, once it exceeds that, then they've got to fully comply. And the one in Bearden could go up to $1.5 million.
This is,
But now the one in Bearden wouldn't have to do anything if this is passed, is that right?
If it stayed under the, that's correct.
So
You're
now
exactly
they don't
right.
have to make any improvements.
That's right. But I just wanted to give the differentiation of values by sector, but you're
Okay.
exactly right.
We're eliminating a lot of properties that financially are not under a burden.
We
that
are.
Could improve it.
We
They're
are.
not going to.
And that's my question. So now we're treating, the $300,000 property the same as the $3 million property. There's no 50% cap with this proposal, is that?
That's correct.
That's correct. I think one of the gains that we got out of this is additional landscaping, perimeter landscaping. It's not, you don't hit that threshold when you've got your 6-foot buffer. You're going to put it in. If you expand your parking lot to beyond 10,000 square feet and you don't have a full 6-foot buffer yard, you still have to add landscaping. That was one of the trade-offs that
I think Mr. Berry
We're
wanted to,
gained.
did you want to add something, Mr. Berry?
I was just going to speak to, I'm Brian Berry with City Plans Review and Building Inspections, to a recent example. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Wallace Baptist Church off of Merchant. So they did some reinvestment in the existing property, particularly the parking lot, with changing some configuration around in addition to adding some features to the building. Based on the code and the requirement, the amount of improvements required them to bring the parking setback and location into compliant with current code, because the nature of where it was located on a residential road, while it had been existing at the current setback of 9 feet, they were going to be required to comply with 25 feet. So they weren't adding new parking. They were basically just kind of reconfiguring and redesigning some things and improving it. And so they had to go and apply for a variance to do that in order to keep the established setback that was already there for the parking lot, when all they were doing was just kind of improving it.
Could you share with us what the hardship was?
The hardship that they provided was existing parking lot became non-compliant due to recode.
Commissioner Higgins?
I would just also add that in that scenario of the two different properties, one hitting its threshold at 150,000, the other hitting its threshold at 1.5 million, both of those properties would be striving to minimize costs, and they're both going to try to avoid doing as much extra work as they can, and the one that has the range of 1.5 million has a lot more range to avoid that, having to do that. So I don't think that this would lead to adverse effects for properties that would have been over the 50%. I think that the 50% actually motivates people to spend less than 50% of the value of their property. So I still have that motion.
Okay. Seeing no other lines, we have a motion and a second, don't we?
Still,
Okay.
in most cases, I'm sorry, I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Midas.
In most cases, isn't the requirement for parking less under the new parking ordinance than before?
yes. What's
So it's not like they're needing to add additional parking. Their requirements are usually less that they don't have to add.
Not, if it's the same use, yes, but if you change the use, if you go from a business office to a restaurant, that parking count's gonna increase because it's a more intense use. Or if you put an addition on, your parking counts are gonna increase because you've got a greater square footage. And most uses, the parking is based on the square footage.
So Mr. Berry was saying that the hardship the church used was that it was a non-conforming use, is that right?
They were specifically reconfiguring their parking lot. And the way the current code is set up, if you reconfigure, it has to comply with current standards. And so they had an existing footprint that they were trying to reorganize. And the way it's written now, you can't just reorganize, you have to shrink it because you've got to get those setbacks.
And so they just said that, what was their reason for a hardship?
Their reason for the hardship was its existing conditions.
But can't someone say that anytime for a hardship? I mean,
They can.
Did they get the variance? Were they approved?
They did.
In that case, let's clarify that. In that case, would it not have killed their drive aisle with the setback? So it would have made the whole property non-functional because of the setback requirement. Is that accurately spoken?
Yeah, once you have to shrink your parking lot now, parking lots, they're not built, Mr. Williams can attest to this, they don't build parking lots with extra space. They usually make them as small as possible, so you've got your parking space and your drive aisles, and that's it. And so if, when reconfiguring, you have to shrink it, now you've just lost either a row of parking spaces or, I don't know, there's a lot of variables, but essentially, folks now, I guess to your point of people gaming the system, they're doing that now already.
I guess I just worry there's going to be a lot more gaming the system because you're not limiting them to any type of percent improvement to their property.
I don't think that I think we're going to see more investment because people won't have to pay money to game the system to get what they want. Right now, if somebody wants to keep their existing parking lot, they'd have to go to BZA, so they have to wait 2 months, spend money, and roll the dice versus just being able to do it.
It's just a shame that so much work. I just feel like the teeth of this ordinance is just being lost by passing this rule. And that's why I just have a hard time supporting it.
I would ask where you've seen it successful.
Well, if we remove it, it's not going to be successful unless a property is raised. And I guess I want for our city, I want more green space. I don't want to see parking lots. And I got the impression that back in 2017 when this was passed, that's what people wanted. Doesn't come down to I mean, I guess what you're saying, it comes down to dollar signs, whether they're going to add trees. And they're probably, they work around the system because they don't, it's the bottom line for a developer, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, I'm not a developer.
Right.
I'd like to see the trees and the landscaping and improve the aesthetics of our streets and our cities.
So I'd like to add a couple things. When we think about parking lots, particularly with landscaping, the things that apply in the landscape ordinance are parking lot perimeter landscape yard, and that's something that still is looked at and applied to based on some of the recommendations here. There is site landscape, which deals with a new building or an addition. So an existing building does not have to require site landscaping unless it's an addition that's 30% or more in square footage. There's interior parking lot landscaping, which only applies to parking lots that are 20,000 square feet or more. And one of the things that we applied or recommended in the new amendment is with a change of use or new addition, when existing parking exceeds the maximum number of spaces permitted, one landscaped parking lot island must be provided between every 10 parking spaces in accordance with this interior parking lot landscape requirement. So we're basically saying if you're overparked, then you need to provide interior islands to accommodate this landscaping until you meet the maximum number by reducing the parking density. So I don't think it's that the landscaping won't be applied or is not applicable. I think it's just
Commissioner Adams.
Just looking at it trying to look at it from a different angle, and this may be completely impossible, but if what Commissioner Midas is concerned about is that now with the changes, there would be no real incentive for people to do this, but to your point, there has been not a lot, it's really disincentivized people from investing in certain parts of the city, and that's the reason for the change. Then is there a way to modify it so that instead of it being perceived as punitive, that, oh, I can't go into this particular property or this particular area, is there a way to incentivize for those who do go ahead and make changes based upon some percentage? Again, maybe that's nuts, but just throw it out there.
There are incentives, there's facade grants, there's stuff that's outside of my department, but I'll say that I agree with you, Ms. Midas, on the dream of people tearing up asphalt. For the past 6 years, that's all it's been, is a dream. These proposals, they don't remove the requirement for landscaping. They actually increase the requirements of landscaping in certain areas that I think you're concerned about. I forgot where I was going. Is there more that I needed to answer for you?
About incentives.
I think you just said not your department.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Commissioner Shelso.
So would there be a way to set a threshold where, say, a building permit worth more than X number of dollars still triggers a 50% rule so that we could keep, is there a way, is it legal to set a threshold on a permit to trigger have two-tiered? Because the privilege of very high property values and continuing to improve those areas, that could stay in place while we incentivize redevelopment of lower cost areas.
I am not aware of a better mousetrap. I'm happy to discuss, collaborate. These proposals are based on real-world examples for the past 6 years.
And overall, I agree that something needs to change. This sort of situation or a lack of equity in different parts of town and being able to feasibly do projects, I think is important for us to look at this. So, ultimately, City Council has to pass this, so maybe some tweaks can be made from here to there.
Commissioner Higgins.
Sorry to keep jumping in. I want to clarify one of the things that when I read this, what made me really excited about this change is, in my experience working in the areas that they're referring to that are disadvantaged here, I think that modern parking standards are more restrictive. They're larger aisles, larger spaces, et cetera. And I think if anything, this will actually help us to have more green space and less asphalt in a lot of cases. And again, with the landscape requirements still being there, I think that we are still requiring a good amount of added landscaping. But in what I'm seeing here is, if you were improving a building, not changing the use or doing an addition, and your parking lot was a few spaces shy of the requirement and you had some green space, with the 50% rule, if you're going over that 50%, you now have to go in and dig up that green space and put parking spaces there. And so with this change, in that scenario, you could actually leave that green space there and roll with the slightly fewer parking spaces than are required. So I see this, I see the concerns, but I also see this as allowing for much better uses of land, so.
All right. Seeing no other lights, we have a recommendation here, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have one opposed. Motion passes 12-1. Moving on to item 18, which is also the City of Knoxville. We have the applicant still present. Let's see, staff recommends approval of amendments to the City Code, Appendix B, Zoning Code, Article 12.5, Parking Lot Perimeter Landscape Yard that provides language that is consistent with the proposed changes to off-street parking, Article 11.1.b, and updates the landscape reference to Section 11.1.b and Article 12.6, interior parking lot landscape yard that provides language that is consistent with the proposed changes to off-street parking, Article 11.1.b, and removes a reference that is no longer found in the removal of Section 11.1.c from Article 11, off-street parking. All right. Director Aaron's, what say you?
This makes the landscaping portion align with the proposals that you just approved.
Okay. We have a motion to approve for the recommendation by Commissioner Phillips, seconded by Vice Chair Uten. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We have one opposition, so 12-1. Motion carries. Thank you, Director Aaron's.
Thank you.
21. Moving on to agenda item 21, the applicant, Karel Polednik Jr. and Olga Polednik. Let's see here. Location southeast side of Griffith Road, east of Schaffner Lane, west of Hill Road, 1.22 acres, present zoning agricultural, zoning requested, low density residential, RA, existing land use, single family residential. Staff recommendation, approve the RA low density residential zone because it is consistent with the sector plan and surrounding development. Is the applicant present? If you'll state your name and address, please.
Karel Polednik, 7828 Griffin Road, Knoxville.
Thank you. Any opposition? Seeing no opposition, you may proceed, Mr. Polednik.
Thank you for taking the time to hear our request. Our plan is to divide the current acreage and to build a single-family home for ourselves. We agree with the staff's recommendation and are happy to answer any specific questions.
Thank you. Vice Chair Uten.
I'll make a motion, we approve for staff recommendation.
Second.
We've got a motion from Vice Chair Uten to approve per staff recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Phillips. Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. On to agenda item 22, applicant DC Foundations, Inc., location south side of Oak Ridge Highway, east of Hazelnut Lane, west of Malone Creek Drive. Approximate size of tract, 2.58 acres. Present zoning, agricultural. Zoning requested, OB, office, medical, and related services. Existing land use, rural residential. Staff recommendation is to approve the OB zone since it is consistent with the sector plans MUSD and NWCO-10, mixed use special district, Shod Road, Oak Ridge Highway, Crossroads, land use designation. The applicant is present. If you'd state your name and address, please.
Andrew Gaither on behalf of DC Foundations. My address is 714 Chickamauga Avenue.
Thank you. Do we have any opposition? We do have would you like to proceed or defer to the opposition?
I'll defer, please.
Okay. If the opposition would come to the podium, please. If you just state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Cassie Kiesler, and I live on Hazelnut Drive.
Thank you.
So I guess our biggest issue kind of with this whole thing is that property, he owns a piece of property across the street, Cattywampus. It's 6800 Oak Ridge Highway, which is currently still zoned residential. He's owned that property for a while now, and he's been using it as a commercial business space and parking large concrete trucks and equipment on that property. If you pull up the Google Map view right now, you'll see that he has those vehicles parked all over that, and it's supposed to be a single family dwelling, not a commercial property. When he put the permit in for this property that he's building on now, he put in a permit request for a single family dwelling with a detached garage, when that was not at all his intention from the jump. That property sits on a floodplain. Only a small percentage of that property is not on the floodplain. I live down the stream from them. He's built up that property to allow for a huge parking area for these trucks that are not supposed to be there, even zoned as an office. He could have trucks there, according to his lawyer, part of the time, but only while he's working on them, which past actions indicate that that will not be the case, and the size of the parking lot that he has created at this piece of property indicates that that will not be the case. He's poured a concrete pad for a large dumpster trash can, which backs up to the creek. It is in the floodplain. It's just going to create a myriad of issues for those of us that are farther down the creek. It already has, because trash from his building site is hung on our fence right now. I just feel like he's going about this wrong, because he's put in for one thing, and he's built the property, the house is there, and now he's trying to shoehorn his way into changing it because, well, it's already there. Yes, it may fit with the sector plan, but I don't truly believe, based on his past, I mean, you can see it there. Those are heavy, huge trucks parked all over that residential piece of property. Past actions don't indicate that he's going to follow the rules this time. And I think that he shouldn't get his way just because it fits into the sector plan, because he's going to do what he wants, and it's still not going to fit in with whatever you guys approve. So, you want to talk, Alvin?
Thank you.
If you're allowed to go forward with this, my question is, are you going to allow him to run a construction site there for his construction company? Because that's what he's going to do. Are you going to make him put in handicap parking? Are you going to make him put in a handicap restroom? Are you going to make the house accessible to the handicap? You know, if you're going to make it commercial and it's going to be office medical, then that's what it ought to be. It shouldn't be. He's built a large building in the back to work on his trucks and stuff like that, so then he's running a garage, even though the garage is to work on his own equipment. So now we have to put up with the noise and the dust from this equipment and stuff like that we had to put up with across the road. The property that I'm talking about that we own is adjacent to this property. It's right next door to it. I'd be out front yard mowing the yard there when my mother-in-law lived there, and they would pull in across the road, and it's just a gravel lot, and dust would go everywhere. It's not a good situation. What are you going to stop the buffer zone? So am I allowed to put my property up as commercial property? Is the next one going to be allowed to do that, or we're going to move it on into the neighborhood? So, you know, sometimes it's got to stop. He did apply for residential to go in there, and so that's what we expect. But you can see that his plans were, he's not upholding what he originally went after, and that's about it.
Thank you for your comments.
I still got a minute 6. Can I say something else?
Yeah, come on up briefly, yes.
Real quick, I want to add too that the parking of those commercial vehicles on that floodplain, and in an area that is going to potentially leak whatever stuff, and if he's working on these vehicles in that area, into the creek, which is going to contaminate the water in that area, because it's going to flood. It does. And a lot of the homes on down from him are on well, so you're looking at potentially contaminating our wells as well. And if he's going to be working on vehicles there, then that could potentially happen. So.
Thank you. Okay, Vice Chair Uten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're all having light problems today.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not making a motion, I'm just asking a question.
Okay, what's your question?
Well, my comment here was that we're looking at zoning here, not specific uses, and I don't necessarily have a problem with this transitional zoning away from the commercial. I just had a question for codes and Mr. Elliott. Sounds like there's some issues going on out that way, and I would just like for him to comment on what these uses that these folks are talking about. I would think that would not be appropriate in the OB zone, whether we do this or not. So I just wanted to have you comment to these people here.
It is not an appropriate use in the OB zone. The address across the street, we've actually given a notice of violation, and I think we're moving towards a citation to court if they don't get the equipment out of there. What the owner has told us, he wishes to rezone this property to OB to have just his office space to run the business. But in the OB zone, there's no storage of equipment outdoors, so he couldn't have the concrete trucks and the equipment there. He could only have an office for his business there.
So they would there would be a complaint-driven issue where they would complain to you guys would go out and take a look at it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
And this is a question again for, I'm looking at KGIS, and this picture was sometime in 2022. You can see pretty significant grading. I can't tell from this, but when you all looked at this, one, were they allowed to grade? And then is the silt fence installed correctly? Because it looks like it's only, if I'm looking at it, it looks like it's only on part of the property, not the other. So did they meet all the qualifications for that grading of what they might have done there?
I've not been out there myself, but my staff has. I believe there was some placement of fill in the floodplain that we made them remove. You can't really see from the picture there, but there is an area where they did fill to build the structure that's under construction. But I'm pretty sure we made them remove all of that fill from what was in the floodplain there and install erosion controls.
They were dumping dirt as of yesterday.
Okay, so I would just comment to the opposition that if this is rezoned and it's not being used in compliance with the zoning, these are typically complaint driven, and so I would certainly call Knox County, and it looks like they've already taken action on one case. And applicant, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, what I would say is the applicant just wants to run their office there, and occasionally I think that they will have the trucks that come by, but it is my understanding that they will not be parking them there overnight, as they have another facility that is their concrete facility where they actually crush concrete and store their sand and whatnot for the actual running of their business, and that's the primary storage location for their trucks.
Thank you. Commission?
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the OB zoning per staff recommendation.
Got a motion by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Phillips to approve per staff recommendation. Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
I have just a quick question. This is for my own learning, because I think this is the first time that we've actually had a case where the applicant had an active citation that it became knowledgeable to us. Is there anything that prevents someone, if they have active citations on one property, from coming to work on another property?
No.
No.
All right. We're moving to agenda item 24, Ron Worley. Location, west side of Brownview Road, 8.3 acres. Present zoning is agricultural. Zoning requested, low-density residential, RA. Existing land use, agricultural, forestry, vacant land. Staff recommendation, approve the planned residential zone with up to 2 dwelling units per acre for the portion of the property shown in Exhibit B because it is consistent with the sector plan and surrounding development, subject to one condition. Is the applicant present?
Yes. Scott Williams, 4530 Anna Lee Way, Knoxville 37921. I'm here on behalf of Ron Worley, and I'm an engineer. So
Thank you very much. Do we have opposition? Seeing no opposition, please proceed.
So we requested RA zoning for this. We're looking at doing some residential lots. You'll see an existing Brownview Road coming on the right side of the property identified there, and the client's looking to subdivide off of that road and essentially just develop the opposite side of the road from the houses that are already there. This is an older neighborhood, and we're looking to do similar size lots. So we wanted a similar zoning as RA is what's already there. The staff actually those show as agricultural, but they're pretty much built at the similar to RA zoning, somewhere in the ballpark of 75 feet wide and 10,000 to 20,000 square feet lot sizes. So everything south of the cul-de-sac there, the turnaround, is just straight up the side of the mountain, the Beaver Ridge, so that's unusable, and we agree with staff on that. We don't really want to do anything there. But the portion down there in the flatter area that's along the road, we'd like to subdivide that up, and they've recommended going to a PR zone with the ability to do somewhere around, I think, 2 units per acre, and only on the 4 or so acres that they show that are not a part of the hillside, essentially. So that would only allow for, I think it was 8 lots. Is that correct? I can't remember. I think it was 8 lots total. So we don't really think we're going to do much more than that. I do think that in this case, the RA zone might be better fitting for that particular subdivision. It'll demand that the client actually have more restrictive usage on the property. They'll have to do 70-foot wide and 10,000 square foot lots. And we don't have a problem with the shaded area. I think that's probably in the area that we'll be able to develop. Everything past that's just too steep. So we prefer the RA zone. If we do go to PR, we would request that we would actually end up building probably more to try to offset the increased cost of going to the PR zone. We'd probably end up building 10 units, so I'd request 2.3 dwelling units per acre. And probably do 60-foot wide lots if that were the case, but I would rather just go with the 70-footers and 10,000 square feet. I think it's reasonable for the surrounding area.
Commission? Vice Chair Uten.
Yeah, I'm okay with what the applicant is proposing. This is, if we were cutting in new roads and doing a bunch of new things and changing grades, I'd probably want another bite at it. But just cutting off normal lots on an existing county road, that RA, on sewer, you're going to have a certain lot size. I think it's 10,000 square feet on sewer, and you'll probably end up with a better looking set of lots across the street than you would if you did the PR, because the PR, like you said, you can do these really small lots there, which would not be in character with across the street. So I'd make a motion we approve the RA zone.
Second.
We've got a motion from Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Roth, to approve per staff recommendation. No, excuse me. What was the?
Go to RA.
By the applicant's request, to approve per the applicant's request. Okay. Everybody clear on that? Ms. Porche?
Yeah, I just wanted to also point out that the road, that Brownview Road is substandard in that area. It's not striped, it's only 14 feet wide, and so it was the opinion of Engineering and Public Works that if they did exceed the number of lots that are currently allowed under the ag zone, that they would need to do road improvements. And 8.30 acres, one dwelling unit per acre, they'd be currently allowed to do 8. So staff's recommendation was trying to be in line with what they would currently allowed. So I just wanted to make sure the applicant knew that if they do go to 10, there would be a likelihood of road improvements, and I'll defer to engineering what that might include.
Thank you.
Mr. Elliott, do you have a comment?
Yes, that's correct. We met with Mr. Worley on site and discussed with him. He currently by right could build 8 houses now on the 8 acres. So anything that exceeds those 8, we would want to discuss with him, maybe some road widening.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
I'm gonna skip it. All right, on to agenda item 28, subdivision Belltown, applicant developer Smith Built Homes, location north and south sides of West Emory Road, west of Rio Grande Drive, approximate acreage 52.62 acres, zoning plan development and agricultural, existing land use agricultural, forestry, vacant land, rural residential, proposed use detached residential subdivision, number of lots 169. This will require 4 variances and alternative design standards. And the staff recommendation, this will require 2 motions. First motion or recommendation is to approve the requested variances and alternative design standards based on the justification provided by the applicant and recommendations of Knox County Engineering and Public Works. Second recommendation, approve the concept plan subject to 11 conditions. Is the applicant present?
Josh Sanderson, 4909 Ball Road, representing Smith Built Homes.
Do we have any opposition? Any opposition? Seeing none, you may proceed.
This is phase 1 of Belltown. We're excited to get started, and this lines up with the first phase of the pretty picture I presented in December or January or sometime in the last 6 or 7 months. But I'm here to answer any questions.
Commissioner Adams.
Can you remind me if for this phase 1 area, the land that is, on this side, if the mature trees that are there now, if those stay, is that?
Yeah, on the western border, you can see that's a blue line, so we won't be able to cross that. All that vegetation will stay.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Shelso.
This is a question for the applicant. On the part, the row of, I don't know, they're not townhomes. Where the alley is, along the power lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a sidewalk that runs all the way down in front of all of those. And then it just ends at the end. And on the master plan, like just directly right of phase 1, that little area of land that there's nothing on there, right there, yeah. The master plan showed some sort of amenity of a, like, basketball, I don't know, tennis courts or something. Is that a future phase?
No, we'll be putting that in with this phase. It's pickleball, basketball, parking, and the milk kiosk. So all that will be connected with sidewalks and parking.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody clear? Okay, so we have a, what's that? You need, okay, Vice Chair Uten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the variances and alternative design standards per staff recommendation.
Second. Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Phillips to approve per staff recommendation. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the concept plan subject to the 11 conditions. And one of those conditions, Commissioner, is that the amenities have to be built as these phases get done. So approved per the 11 conditions.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the concept plan subject to 11 conditions by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Phillips. Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank y'all for your time.
Agenda item 30, applicant Clay Council. Location north side of Shaw Road, east of Albatross Lane, approximate size 1.15 acres. Zoning is general business, CA. Existing land use, commercial. Proposed use, contractor storage yard. Staff recommendation, approve the request for a contractor storage yard with the approximately 1,200 square feet of outdoor storage area subject to the 5 noted conditions. The applicant present.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do we have any opposition? We do have opposition. Would you like to proceed or defer?
I'll defer.
Okay.
My name is Daniela Molodev. I'm the
Ma'am,
president
if
of
you could,
Harsa.
there is a button there that you could lower the podium.
Yeah, maybe I need it, yeah.
If you'll restate your name, please.
My name is Daniela Molodev. My address is 6750 Albatross Lane, and I'm also the president of Harston Homeowners Association on Albatross Lane. I had another neighbor with me, but he had to leave, and a few others interested to come, but we all thought, the meeting will be at 1:30, and most are busy with their jobs. So if you look on the map, this request for a storage yard will be just next to our subdivision in the back. Most homeowners are very worried that this will devalue their properties and will also cause a nuisance to our subdivision. As you already know, we are very close to Shad Road, and most of us, we think that we have enough, with Shad Road, with Creekside Food Truck Park, and with Smash Mouth Barbecue. There are 11 comments left online, and all of them are against this. One of the neighbors, I think the first neighbor that left a comment online, she mentioned Chapter 12 from the Noise Ordinance, Section 1201. Let me just read part of it. The County Commission finds that excessive noise is detrimental to the physical, mental, and social well-being of the citizens of the county, as well as to their comfort, living conditions, general welfare, and safety. So this noise issue is very, very important to our subdivision, and we are all very worried, what's going to happen if you approve this equipment storage yard, what's going to happen to all these, homeowners living in there. Let me just... Residents purchased along with their properties a right to quiet enjoyment. This means they have a right to occupy their land without disturbance. Most homeowners in Harston moved into their houses in 2020. To buy a house in 2020 and only enjoy it for 3 years before having a construction equipment storage yard disturb that right is a violation of 31 families' property right and their Fifth Amendment right to their property. So we're not asking you to do us a favor, to deny this request, but you also have to understand we all live in that subdivision, and the noise will affect our daily lives. We need to sleep, we need to enjoy our property. I mean, this will take away that right. So we would, I mean, in the name of Harston subdivision, we would like to ask, to deny this request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Clay Council. I run a landscaping company, and my address is 8912 Strawflower Drive in Knoxville. We just hope to do what's being done for, I think, the last 10 years on this piece of property. It was previously owned and operated by Bear Landscaping. They shuttered, I think, about 4 years ago, and then the last tenant was JK Aquatics and ran a garden center out of that location. They sold ponds, pond plants, boulders, had a garden center with a greenhouse and lots of other amenities. In fact, I think that's what all the pictures are right now of when JK Aquatics was there. And so I come before you just really saying we're going to rinse and repeat, doing kind of what was done before. And in terms of any noise or noise violations, we don't do any work at that location. We're a landscaping company, and we service locations all over Knoxville and the surrounding communities. And so we literally would store our landscape equipment there at night and then leave in the morning and go do our business everywhere else except there. And so really that's the long and the short of it. I can answer any questions if you have any.
Council?
I have a question.
Commission? Wrong meeting.
This facility does currently or would in the future store mulch, correct?
We don't currently store mulch, and yeah, that would be, so we moved from 1/3 of an acre down off Sutherland Avenue, and this is 3 times the size, and so this would give us opportunity to store bulk materials. And so per staff's recommendation, that's why we're here today, because there's not bulk storage there. But we would like to buy in bulk, much like most medium to full-size landscaping companies do. They'll buy a truckload at a time of river rock or mulch or pine straw or something like that and store it on facility until they need it, and just kind of optimize scale and essentially just buy a whole bunch of it and load it up in the morning and then take it out.
So during agenda review, Commissioner Phillips brought up the comment about odor being generated from
Yeah, I heard
mulch.
about that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So is there some special solution that you have for that?
No.
Okay.
I mean, mulch is dead wood. I mean, but it's right across, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. The property is adjoining to the municipal golf course, and so you've got that large piece of property there, and then there is that one cul-de-sac at the far back corner that the houses are visible, but most of the actual adjoining neighbors have pretty good size yards that are 50 to 60 yards away from our perimeter fence there. I don't think the 2 previous owners, well, they stored some mulch, but they didn't sell mulch out of there. They sold rock and pond and plant materials, but they sold plant materials, which is essentially algae sitting in a wading pool all day long. And so I don't know if there was any odor from that, but again, it's nothing earth-shatteringly different than what was done in previous 2 businesses that were there.
Was there, Michelle? Oh, Whitney, was there a comment that they were going to store, the recommendation was that they were going to store the mulch away from the residents?
Yeah, if there's any consolation, it would, gosh, if I could drive the mouse, it would be kind of that, see that up towards the front of the property. Well, I think I did designate kind of where we would do it in one of these attachments. Yeah, right there, that attachment. The storage bins would be kind of on the municipal golf course side of the property, I guess, and almost as far away from the cul-de-sac as we could get.
And is that, can we make that, is that already a condition of the?
Yes, it's per the site plan, so.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Yeah, and staff has reviewed with me the conditions around the site plan and the feet and, all the different things I would need to do and where we would need to put it. So I'm in agreement with all that.
Is the site plan binding where the storage goes? Like you can't decide to move them to the back later?
I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
Logistically, it wouldn't make sense.
I'll just say that on use and reviews, development plan is part of the zoning as well. So I mean, if there was a large difference between how they operate versus what's shown, then it could be a violation.
And also, I'll add too, if it's a major concern, you could also make it a condition of the approval.
Vice Chair Uten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that the submittal of the site plan is a part of the staff recommendation, but to make sure we do belt and suspenders here, I will make a motion that we approve the request for the storage yard, subject to the 5 conditions that staff provided, as well as a 6th condition that binds the site plans that they submitted for the locations of those outdoor bulk materials as a part of the conditions of approval.
Second.
Okay, so we got a motion by Vice Chair Uten, seconded by Commissioner Scelso to approve with one added condition that would bind the location of the outdoor storage of the, what was the bulk material? Everybody clear on that? Commissioner Smith.
And this is just a question for county engineering. I know this is kind of the last section of Shad Road to Shad Road that's still got to be widened. But everything that they've proposed, it's enough setback that there's not any problems going forward, correct?
It is, Commissioner Smith. We've actually purchased the right-of-way from this property, so we're set up to move forward with the road project.
Okay, having a motion and a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is 31. Applicant Sarah Berry, location northwest side of Ike Lane at its western terminus, west of Hurst Lane. Approximate size of tract, 10,312 square feet. Zoning, low-density residential, RA. Existing land use, single-family residential. Proposed use, group daycare for a maximum of 15 children comprised of 12 preschool-age children and 3 elementary school-age children. Staff recommendation is to approve the request for a group day care home for no more than 8 children, subject to the noted 4 conditions. Is the applicant present?
Yes. Yes.
Please state your name and address.
Sarah Berry, 705 Ike Lane.
Do we have any opposition? Seeing no opposition, if you'd like to proceed, please.
Okay. Thank you to the Knox County Planning Committee for hearing my case, and to the planning staff for their recommendations, and to my neighbors who took the time to speak with me about my plans. I'm requesting for approval of my family's home as a use on review for a group home daycare with a capacity regularly kept at 12 with an additional 3 elementary school age children, if allowed by Tennessee Department of Human Services child care licensing, while my family is not living in the home. While I see it is noted that in Article 2.2 in zoning, group child care homes are prohibited over 12, as noted in the report, I would ask the committee to consider the number 26 definition, which I've listed in my case, of a group child care home used by Tennessee Department of Human Services licensing, which also refers to 12 regularly used spaces, but allows for the capacity to change if licensing approves an additional 3 elementary school age children, which do not regularly use the spaces. I would like my experience in childcare and the growing community need to be considered when deciding to approve my request. I have had a passion for working in childcare since graduating high school from Union County High in 2004. My very first summer out of high school, I began my childcare career as a part-time nanny for my young cousins in West Knoxville, and I often pick them up from Giving Tree Montessori, which is a Department of Education licensed center, which still operates today out of a single family home in a neighborhood about 3 minutes from Rocky Hill Elementary. The next summer, while on break from East Tennessee State University, I began working at the Boys and Girls Club of Halls and Powell, which is just down the street from where I'm proposing to operate my licensed group child care home. From 2005 to 2012, I continued growing in the profession of early childhood development and education while working at KinderCare in Johnson City, Tennessee, and finished my education at East Tennessee State, where I received my bachelor's in child psychology and my master's in experimental psychology, focusing on infant studies. In 2010, I came back to Knoxville for several months while working on my master's thesis. And in 2010, and I nannied again for my newly adopted cousins who also went to Giving Tree Montessori. I also gained additional childcare experience as a substitute for Starting Point's childcare in Farragut, which is a DHS license center that was converted from a single-family home and rezoned. My family has moved multiple times and lived in both Richmond, Virginia and San Diego, California, and I carried on in my profession working for KinderCare in Virginia in multiple center-based sites and growing into a director of a site with 100 enrolled children and 13 staff. And when we moved to California, I began researching how to open a child care facility for the first time for my family's local church at the request of my pastor. I ended up pursuing my own license to operate a family child care home for up to 8 children in my home, and I did give the pastor's granddaughter a discount. I closed my child care home business for several weeks at a time in the summer and during winter breaks so my family could travel back to Tennessee and Virginia to spend time with our family. After almost 2 years of operation, I closed my family home child care business when the pandemic hit. However, I kept working as long as I could and was employed by a franchise owner and operator of a worldwide trilingual child care center to help the owner open her own center in the U.S. After a few months, I had to stop working because I have 2 young school-aged children of my own who were set to attend virtual school, all while my husband worked remotely as well. My family moved back to Tennessee in summer 2020, and since then I began working as a site director for a DHS licensed after-school program where I am still currently employed. It's right across the street from one of my very first jobs and in an elementary school for which the land was donated by a descendant of a first family of Tennessee, for which I am also a descendant. Although my family is moving a few hours away to Radford, Virginia for my husband's job, I have strong ties to Knoxville, a family that loves to travel and for several weeks at a time, multiple family places to reside in Tennessee while operating the group child care home license, and I want to invest in my Tennessee home and community. In my professional opinion as a child care provider, and from what I hear from local North Knox families on a weekly basis when I answer inquiries about care, I believe that approving my use on review could serve the surrounding community well, with a capacity of 12 regularly used spaces and an additional 3 elementary-aged children if approved by licensing. My greatest hope is that the Cedar Flats neighborhood and the surrounding community could utilize the care of my home and could provide, which would maximize the space while minimizing traffic. And that with 12 regularly offered childcare spaces, I could have multiple employees, which better provides support for the children and staff and the home childcare business as a whole. My hope is that the 3 additional elementary age spaces, if approved, could be reserved for families of the Cedar Flats community or the families who already utilize the home for their younger children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
So I just want to make sure I'm looking at this correctly, because I see what you requested versus what staff's recommended is a little different. But if I'm reading these correctly, DHS for 15 children requires 58 square feet of space, not including halls, kitchens, things like that. And based on your criteria, you've got 58.46 at 15 kids, including the 3 additional school-age children. But it looks like the county is recommending 8, which would almost double that space. So I'm just looking, I guess, for staff to kind of help me why we're doing why our recommendations are a little more stringent than DHS here.
Ms. Hillman?
So the definition of a group daycare home in the zoning ordinance is to not exceed 12 and to have a minimum of 8. So that was the reference point. So they would need a variance to exceed 12.
So that's the county variance. There's no variance that says 12 underage with the additional 3 age, which is what the state law says.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Go ahead.
So it says regular use when I saw that. When I met with Ms. Hillman, we didn't discuss that specific article, 2.2, but when I read it, it says regularly used, so that was why I asked for the allowance of the additional 3, because it does say regular use in the Tennessee Department of Human Services definition of group home childcare, but that's why the additional 3 have to be approved, because they're not regularly used spaces.
Ms. Hillman, would you like to comment on that?
I would just defer to codes on their interpretation.
I'm sorry, I was talking to Jim. Repeat the question.
My question boiled down to DHS regulation. Says that there has to be 58 square feet of space per child. She's a little over that. That would allow her for the 12 regularly under school age, with the variance of the 3 children who could be school age that, as she just described, based on the code in DHS, that it's not regular because they're not there all the time, it's after school care. How would that conflict with any codes? Because it feels like right now the county's a little bit out of sync with DHS in this one, so that's why I'm trying to understand it.
They are. I don't believe we would look at the space other than from a building code perspective. So, I guess the occupancy class would be determined by the number of students she was going to have, which could kick in the sprinkling requirements. But I don't think we would have an issue that the zoning ordinance actually says she can have between 8 and 12 children. The 3 that were part-time, I don't think would count towards that. So, did that answer your question?
It does. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, and I appreciate, Jesse, for your work on this, but I'm going to go back and make a motion that we approve the original request for a maximum, I'm going to word it a little different, maximum of 12 regular children and up to 3 elementary school age children that would not be considered regular care.
Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Perez, based on the request of the applicant, which is 8 to 12 occupancy with 3 elementary that are, I'll say, irregular use. We good with that? Are we good with that? Okay, let's go on to some more discussion. That's the motion. Commissioner Midas.
Thank you, Chair Hill. My question, so you are not going to be living in the house?
No, if I'm living in the house, I'm not required to have the use on review, and I can seek the license on my own. I'm coming to planning first into my neighborhood because I have the intent to live in the home to start it, hire people to help me run it, and then run some of the operations from outside of the home and use the home solely as that.
I guess my concern is just the parking for those employees. And then there's something to be said, like I feel like a group daycare home is a home. Someone lives there and they're more accountable to the neighbors that, are your neighbor that live next door to you. What feedback has the neighbors? How do they feel? Do they understand that you're not going to be living in this house? And
Yes, so I'm currently employed, and multiple of the neighbors that I've spoke with in person have been neighbors that are actually touching properties with me. The neighbors that I haven't spoke with that have put comments on, most of which I saw this morning, I don't know if it just didn't update or what happened, but the majority came in yesterday. And most of those comments are from neighbors that didn't speak with me and don't actually touch the property that I'm on. The neighbors that I've spoken with are neighbors that have not had any opposition. I've made sure to answer any questions. And then again, with me starting at living in the home and planning to be back quite often, as I mentioned, I am a longtime Tennessee resident. And my family plans to travel. That was why we were so candid with the information we shared with them, which they very publicly shared and not all accurately. Those were neighbors that aren't even in adjacent properties to me. Those are neighbors on cul-de-sacs that aren't even in my area. So I would be happy to address their concerns. We do have space for parking in the back. We're one of the few residences where you can't even see the parking from the street. And then the only 2 additional spaces that we would put in are on a sidewalk area that's already got some pavement. I don't believe it would be an eyesore, and most of the parking pads that are already there are quite large compared to the one that I'm proposing. So with me coming back quite often and actually spending time in the home during peak times, I feel like I would still be very much a part of the community.
So I thought there was not going to be a need for a parking pad. Does that change if we go to 12?
It would, yeah, the 2
Yeah.
parking pads would be needed if it went to 12 or 15. So,
Yeah, I guess that's what gives me some hesitation in going to 12 is, changing the aesthetic looks of the home by adding that parking pad. Is there going to be any signage? Have you?
I wasn't planning on doing any signage. It's not something where I think it's in an area where it would need signage to draw in people or for people to know where it was. I plan to use mostly word of mouth type references for bringing people in. And like I said, I'm a strong member of the community currently in childcare and long-term.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Phillips.
I'm confused. How staff sees it one way and code sees it another. So the motion that was made, does that comply with this county zoning?
The group daycare home says a residence licensed by the State Department of Human Services in which care, protection, and supervision are regularly provided for at least 8 children, 8, but not more than 12 children. I don't think I disagree with planning. The zoning ordinance would allow up to 12, so I'm not disagreeing with the planning's recommendations.
The other 3 are, I guess, she describes as irregular service.
But then we get into an issue of how do you monitor that? I mean, is it going to be, it could end up being 12 every day. I mean, who knows?
Mr. Chairman, this is where DHS licensing comes in, because what it says is not more than 12 children or 15 children if approved for 3 additional school agers. That's the DHS code. So when they submit everything, they have to go through yearly licensure. They're going to inspect their records. They're going to look at how many kids were there, the ages. If they're breaking that, they're going to get in trouble with DHS. That's really where all of this falls for licensing purposes.
Yeah, but we're talking about zoning, not DHS requirements at this point. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're in compliance with the zoning code. I'm not sure we are.
I think Mr. Elliott said he didn't count the 3. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, again,
I said, I think Mr. Elliott said he didn't count the 3, the elementary.
I think the 3 that are after school care, right? That's what, I don't think they would count towards the 12 that are full-time there. Now, I think we raised a good point here during the summer. Are those 3 going to be full-time in the summer? I think you could only have 12 full-time, and 3 after school care would not count towards that 12. I think so you could only have 12 full-time children there. Does that summarize what you're...
Commissioner Shelso.
Just to clarify, with 12 plus maybe 3, compared to the staff recommendation of 8, there has to be parking added to as provided in the application, right?
So the 3 that are provided in the site plan at the rear of the house, if it was capped at 8, those would be sufficient with the off-street parking requirements. To get to 12, there would need to be those 2 additional.
And those 2 spots are in the front on that site plan, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I just don't see this property as an appropriate place to put a parking lot in the front of the house. You're adding more traffic. I mean, I think if we were going to do it, I think the recommendation of 8 is on point. So, I mean, I'm inclined not to support 12 at the end of a cul-de-sac, a residential cul-de-sac.
Especially when it says it should be on the perimeter of a neighborhood on an arterial or collector street. We're at the end of a cul-de-sac. And the only reason they're using it is because it's available, it's theirs. I don't think we're doing the neighbors any favor, that's for sure.
Commissioner Smith?
And to Commissioner Celso's point, can we zoom back in on that? The two pads that are already shown on there, are those existing out front? Or are they drawn in?
No, they're not existing. The pad in the back is existing, and it has the 3 spaces.
Okay, just the way the drawing look, they were already, yeah, those two pads are the ones I'm asking about. So those don't exist right now?
Mm-mm, no.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith, did your staff, I'm sorry, your motion include the 4 conditions? I didn't hear you.
Sorry, yes, it should have included the 4 conditions as well.
Thank you.
Do we have a shot of the subdivision? Could we get an aerial shot of the subdivision? Can we zoom in a little bit more? Could we, let's see here. I just want to look at some of the adjacencies here. What, if you look to the, I guess that'd be to my east, two parcels over, what is it? It looks like it extends to the street. What is that? You see that? Never mind. Okay. Yep, all right. Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Let's call the roll.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Uten?
Golly. Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Phillips? Commissioner Shelto?
No.
Commissioner Perez?
Yes.
Commissioner Browning?
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins?
Yes.
Commissioner Levinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Adams? Commissioner Roth?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Midas? Commissioner Hill?
No.
Seven to 5.
Motion passes 7-5.
Thank you.
All right. Item 33, applicant Strawberry Plains Pike Pickleball LLC. Location northwest side of Strawberry Plains Pike, northeast of Wooddale Church Road, southwest of South Wooddale Road. Approximate size of tract 6.42 acres. Zoning agricultural, existing land use agricultural, forestry, vacant land. Proposed use indoor pickleball facility. Staff recommendation, approve the request for an indoor pickleball facility with an approximately 14,600 square foot floor area, subject to the 3 noted conditions. Is the applicant present?
Yes, I'm representing Strawberry Plains Pike Pickleball. My name is Aaron Norton, 237 South Winstead Avenue, Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Thank you. Any opposition? Have any opposition? Seeing no opposition, please proceed.
Okay. To best of my knowledge, we fulfilled what we need for approval. I've worked with Jesse Hillman on the architectural drawings to make sure that we met the agricultural zoning requirements and transitioned into that. We have our site engineer available here as well, and will be available for any questions.
Okay.
Make a motion, we approve the request as recommended by staff.
Second. Got a motion by Commissioner Phillips, seconded by Commissioner Roth. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Can we, Okay. Next, we have, I'd like to turn it over for a report from the nominating committee, and the chair of the nominating committee to present a slate of officers is Commissioner Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman Hill. So the nominating committee met on Tuesday, and that committee is Commissioner Roth, Commissioner Boyer, as well as myself. And unanimously, we are recommending to our nominating our existing slate of officers, Commissioner Hill as chair and Commissioner Uten as vice chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Phillips. And at this time, we will open the floor for additional nominations if you so choose to nominate.
Not it, so I vote we vote. Not it, so I vote we vote by acclamation and put y'all back in.
So at this time, seeing no other lights, we will close the floor for nominations, and we will vote next month. And I want to say,
You need to probably have a motion
I'm
to
sorry.
approve the slate.
okay, let's have a motion
So
to
move.
Second. Leave it to the lawyer.
motion to approve by Commissioner Phillips, seconded by Commissioner Levinson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We will vote next month. Adios, Executive Director Welch. We appreciate you. We're adjourned.